corner on the Standard. He gets
and then gets a
headline.
half page. He gets a headline, and then he gets a half page on page 7.
Good.
So it's quite a thing. Ruto threatened me, claims Mutua, and he said he decided to go to the public because he felt the threats cannot be treated lightly for the sake of his personal security. And of course, he's also asked for the beefing up of his security and is asking the national government to do something about this. And he wanted to put it into the public arena in case anything should happen to him or the members of his family or those he's associated with. He has told you he has told you ahead of time, so that in case anything should happen, you were forewarned.
Yeah, he gets that headline as well on the Nation, and a 3/4 page on page 4 of the Nation.
Right.
But Duale and Murkomen have also responded. Senator Murkomen says Mutua is of no consequence to anyone to deserve any attention, let alone threats. Eden Duale says you will not gain relevance by shouting names of leaders who have achieved more than you can ever do. Right. So Duale believes he has achieved more than Mutua could ever achieve.
And the question is, did he threaten him or didn't he? Whether he's achieved more than him or not is another
It's
matter
neither here
altogether.
nor there.
But did you see that statement by Mutua? It's like he was reporting verbatim. He has such a wonderful memory. I mean, I can remember everything that you've told me.
If
Even
somebody threatens you, my
you will
friend, you'll
remember
remember.
everything they've told you.
Everything that you've done.
Oh, yes.
You'll remember.
Oh.
Either you'll have a completely blank.
breathes in.
He'll have a complete blank.
Nitakwambia
Yes,
nini.
if you're actually threatened, you'll either be blank,
You'll be
completely
scared,
blank,
or you'll remember
or
every
you'll
detail.
remember every detail.
You'll remember the expression on the person's face. You'll remember how they moved, what they did.
How they posed
Truly, you will. Yeah.
mid-sentence.
It has a play on
Then
your
how you're
psychology.
responding, and then he interjected. But mheshimiwa, usiniambie.
Although you are advised generally not to put into the public domain that your life has been threatened, because those who've been thinking about taking your life could take it as an opportunity because
To
they
take you out
yes
and put the blame on somebody else.
absolutely. So somebody you owe
What
10
about the
bob.
alternative that once it's out in the open, they will now be
Then now
scared
they're scared.
to carry out what
There
they've
is that,
intended.
absolutely. It's a balancing
Because
act.
you get beefed up security as well.
I think most NGOs advise that you do put it out there. I've seen discussions online that it's best you put it out there. But I think politically you're going to have quite a number of enemies and people could actually take advantage of this.
I think the
because
DP took that advice when he told us about his attempted or thought to do
the
assassination.
all these
Yes.
attempts.
Yeah, I know.
A bit like a movie, isn't
That
it?
that
Being
matter
in
just
Kenya.
died down and vanished, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
There's a case in
It tends
court.
to happen when something is not founded on truth.
There's a case in court about it.
Yes, there is. But why would the governor of Machakos actually just come up and decide to cry wolf? Why would he be talking about being threatened if he actually wasn't threatened?
And
Ruto
it seems to be
alinifinya.
something he remembers, and he talks about the details. And I think the first incident was the day he left. He was here in the studio, and he left that, and he went straight to the
Bomas.
BBI, to State House from here, and that was when the first one happened.
As to why the DP would threaten him, if he in fact did threaten him, probably be political, of course. You can see Mutua's leanings towards the QLK faction of Jubilee.
And the opening and the rather open expression of support during Kibra just before the election. So
And the following he then would have if the DP was looking to make inroads in Ukambani. I think Mutua would act as a hurdle, no doubt.
I'm sure we'll hear about more about this today.
There's this is the headline here on The Nation. Modern Coast travelers furious over refunds. They are still stranded in Mombasa as the banned bus company remains mum on promises to refund their fares. So those who had booked for travel, they haven't received any refunds and they are stranded. Not just in Mombasa. I can imagine it would be all the places that these buses operate.
Right, different places around the country. Of course, outside the country, going to Dar es Salaam and other parts of Tanzania.
Yes.
But I mean, just try and imagine 88 buses having been grounded as a result of the revoking of the license.
Yes.
And people around this time have booked in advance. People started booking tickets as early as November 1st. And then suddenly you are told, and you can imagine people put away their money and they did this to and fro. And suddenly you can't go anywhere. You don't have extra funds to book another bus. And if you did, most of those buses by now are full. So you can imagine the angst that is coming from that.
Serious one. City, what do you have?
Two things. One, there is a fake pastor. The headline state is a fake pastor. The name is Isaac Muthuya, and how he swindled Kenyans out of 2.8 billion.
2.8 billion shillings.
Well, yes, apparently he had this virtual currency empire, and people bought into it. I don't know why they're focusing on his being fake pastor. If everything we read here is true, the man is just a thief. So they should start with the thief posing as pastor, okay, swindles Kenyans out of. That would be, in my opinion,
2 billion.
2.7 billion.
In how long?
Well, it's over a period of time. I mean, this man is actually an IT, well, he's not a specialist. He studied computer science. I think every time someone studied something, you're told an expert in. No, he studied computer science. And he had his businesses in Nairobi, Murang'a, and apparently...
And people are buying into his quote-unquote Bitcoin. Because that's
his variety.
They must have called
that's his variety of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But what is for sure is that this is one situation where all that glitter was not gold. But I'll be talking more about people who present themselves as men of the cloth or men of God. And going a little bit into it and how it is that this has become a growth industry around the world. Because it's one of those few professions where for the longest time you actually do not need any qualification except your own personal declaration.
Unless you're in Rwanda, though, of course, Kagame has clamped down.
No,
on that.
Kagame has actually set down clear rules. You must have this, you must have this sort of qualification, you must have this. And I think that's the right way to go.
The direction to take. So
It's the
we're
direction
discussing
to
that.
take, yes.
There is the question, or it does beg the question as to whether it's your violation of your freedom of expression. Because you should be able to express yourself freely. And if you so happen to influence people and for them to fall under your sort of spell and give you all their money, that is their business.
We'll get into it. So Waiguru has done something. She has written a demand letter to a gentleman called Kennedy Tariq Ombima.
A.K.A. King Kaka.
King Kaka.
A.K.A.
Why?
Sungura. A.K.A. Rabbit
Over the
Hole.
song.
Why?
Wajinga Nyinyi, from all social media. She wants it deleted from all social media platforms and to apologize for uttering highly defamatory allegations against her in the lyrics.
Has he?
Yes,
He has.
he mentioned her in the lyrics,
What did he say about her?
talking about NYS and all.
Yeah, but she was in the NYS, was she not?
Well,
he talks about her having stolen the NYS.
He actually says she stole.
Absolutely. And he basically makes a false statement purporting it
No,
to be true.
that now, of course, is tricky. Because this matter, no.
Unless there's evidence, of course, that would be his only defense. If he can find evidence, he needs to take it to the DCI and the DPP.
Yep.
But I think
This
she
is
has
one of
every right
those-
to defend herself.
Yeah.
Although, of
She
course,
does.
it is
She
contentious
does.
with
She
public
does.
figures.
She does.
When it comes to liable cases and public figures, we've seen globally a general trend for them not to sue. Because, of course, freedom of speech and, of course, the fact that they are public figures and they're prone to more scrutiny. And in order to uphold democracy, you can't sort of tie people in or scare them away with these liable cases. They should be able to say what they want, but within reason. If you start accusing people of crimes that carry with them custodial sentences, then yes, of course, she has every right to defend herself. Of course, some will claim that this was already information that was in the public domain. So
Fair
it's-
comment.
No, a false statement is not. It's not less libelous because it's a repetition of a rumor.
When the matter was in court, there is no case that found her guilty. So you cannot claim that she is.
She hasn't even been charged.
He may even claim that he has not mentioned Anne Waiguru. the CS.
As I asked,
No. The way it works.
did he
may
mention
claim
the
So long
name?
as-
That's what
so-
I asked, and you
Let
said
us-
yes. Did he
let
mention
us-
her name?
Let us see how his
that
defense
could be a
responds
defense,
to this.
but so long as the audience generally understood it to be her, then he would be liable for libel.
Let's
Did
see
he
how-
mention the name? Did
No,
he say
it doesn't.
Anne
In
Waiguru?
the law, it doesn't
doesn't
have
say
to
Anne
be the
Waiguru.
name.
No.
If
Says Waiguru.
it doesn't have to be the name.
Says
Even
Waiguru.
even if he just insinuated, and the public knew and understood who it was he was talking about, that is enough grounds for libel. So if I sat here, CT, and talked about a man in a checked shirt and in sort of his 50s, late 50s, and he's a researcher, and he's got a deep voice and great English and wears glasses, and his first name starts with C. We don't have to go into detail and mention your name. We would all know
you will
exactly.
have described something like 50% of the people who work either at Cambridge or the University of London.
I was talking about a man in this studio. So it sort of goes without saying, but we'll look into that case further in terms of whether he mentions her name or not. That's the weakest of defenses because everybody could tell it was her, and we'll look at that. There's case law for that.
What do you have, Jerry?
The wars in Uhuru and Raila parties, so power games and the handshake, which claims to have thawed tension between the president and the opposition leader, which is of course true, but it's also apparently stoked fiery internal rivalries amongst their loyalists. So it's got a sort of imagery here, infograph, so to speak. Kenyatta-Ruto allies have been split over the BBI and what it means, and they're in a vicious battle for control of the party. And then you've got Ruto's presidential ambitions, of course, and Uhuru has also ignored calls to convene parliamentary group meetings, the parliamentary group meeting since 2017 elections. Of course, key Raila allies fight dirty. Well, it says here fight dirty in desperate attempts to get for his support for governorship in 2022 and party positions. Leaders are split over the Secretariat and Elections Board, which are accused of operating like cartels. This is within ODM. So basically, this handshake has really shook things up, hasn't it? In both parties, MPs and governors have conflicting understanding of the BBI and what it means for Raila and the party. So, of course, with politics and its intrigues, there's a lot of politicking and politricking and game playing, and people are really wondering what's going on in both parties. That's ODM and Jubilee. Of course, in Jubilee, it's quite evident that there's been a rift. There's two factions, Kiweleke and the Tanga Tanga faction, with the DP or Ruto leading the Tanga Tanga faction. So
Are there factions in ODM?
Yes, there is no political party that doesn't have factions.
So who's the leader of the rebel faction?
I wouldn't call it a rebel faction. I would call it a
Splinter group.
I wouldn't even call it a splinter. I would just say there are views that differ. And they always are. It's a question of how well you can keep it under wraps. But if they're a group of politicians, what is the group name for a group of politicians together?
Well, now that we have a battery of lawyers.
A monkey of parliamentarians.
It's actually a parliament of monkeys.
It's a parliament of monkeys. Yes,
So-
not a monkey.
You could, play around with it as much as you'd like.
Okay.
Death of Nakumatt after revival efforts fail. Efforts to revive Nakumatt, which was once Kenya's biggest retail chain, have failed. The nation has learned that the chain has now sold what was left of the 6 branches to rival Naivas supermarket in a deal that will see the Nakumatt brand completely disappear by the end of this year.
So sad.
Say goodbye.
I
unfortunate.
personally don't think it's sad, really. Because to me, there are two competing narratives here. That they overstretched themselves and made what is sometimes commonly called in economic circles the tycoon's big mistake. Meaning, you keep expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding to the point where the project becomes unfeasible.
Right.
But if you ask me, I actually don't think this may be the case, because the other narrative is it was deliberate. They knew what they were doing. People who started from being mattress manufacturers,
In
Nakuru
Nakuru.
yes, that's what it was. And you grow, and then they started as small shops that sold industrial goods. It was like
A glorified hardware.
a retail, outlet. Then you grow into a supermarket, and then a hypermarket, etc. And then you're in East and Central Africa. It is possible to collapse. But if I'm to understand the nature of people who actually understand retail banking, retailing, the thing that Nakumatt was characterized by, they understood retail to its nth, meaning they didn't own the building. They didn't even own the machines, they leased them out.
It was in a rental state.
Yes. And whatever they sold, was brought to them and they would pay the vendors
When
when
they
they,
were
had sold
sold.
them. Now, explain to me when you have such a setup, which in my opinion
How do you go
is
broke?
a very clever way of doing business. Okay, how then do you actually go broke?
I think there might be more to it than meets the eye. It is, of course, rumored that maybe some of the owners pulled out their stake as a result of having their accounts frozen for various reasons.
That may be so, but think. The money probably was intended to kickstart the business, isn't it? The business moves on. You get goods. It comes to you. You don't prepay. All right?
So you don't have to actually spend money on
Not
stock.
really. Not really. And even the buildings that they worked in, yes, you do pay, but they will take a lease, say, for 10 years. Right? Now, a lease for 10 years was the guarantee that the owner of the building would have that he would get his money. The entire business structure did not involve cash outlays upfront. If you think about it, maybe right, except for right at the very, very, very beginning.
So are you saying that all the retail chains that collapse worldwide are what? There's an underhand dealing.
No, I'm only.
It's engineered to
no,
collapse.
unless you're going to tell me that all those retail outlets that have collapsed
It's the
worldwide.
same business model, isn't it?
Yes, but are they in Kenya?
They're not.
Exactly. Give me an example of one which collapsed, and I will probably tell you how it collapsed and why it would be different from Nakuma.
There's a retail chain that has that came in from, was it Namibia?
From
and
South
has-
Africa,
from
actually.
South
It's
Africa.
Choppies, and they had
And
to
it's-
close down. But I-
They couldn't cope with the competition.
In about a year.
Yes,
they've
they-
gone
They
Yes.
were here for a year, and then they left.
They simply couldn't cope with the
Yeah.
competition
Because in terms of the expansion, they didn't really expand that much. You could
not
count
really,
in
because
terms of
at
how
the
many
same
they
time
were.
those guys came into being, other local retailers were expanding.
True.
No, I think also you had Carrefour come in, which of course had the financial muscle to sort of trump all these guys in terms of size and number of outlets.
But I wouldn't
But
say they
still-
trampled them because, look, we have a local franchise, Food Plus, Chandaria. They just seem to be growing. You look at Naivas, you look at Tuskies. So there was enough business.
To go round.
Yes,
really.
that's why. What are they called again?
Choppies. The
No,
South
no,
Africans,
the one which.
Carrefour.
Carrefour.
Oh, that's how it's pronounced.
Yes. This French is a good thing.
Carrefour.
Carrefour. Yeah, it is Carrefour. Yes. So I think there was enough business for all those people. Somehow, businesses that seem to work in South Africa, unfortunately, don't seem to work here.
They don't, and I think it's a sort of attitude of the South Africans coming in and acting like they understand our markets and they know us. I've seen it with quite a number of sectors. South Africans coming in and not quite. We
It
had
should be
Castle.
studied actually on how
We had Castle Beer come in, of
But they
course,
work in
those-
Tanzania, by the
they
way.
work in Tanzania, they come to Kenya, they find it hard.
It's competition.
Yes. Not
It's
necessarily.
competition, but also it's just not understanding our psyche and our internal market and sort of the nuances therein, I think, with the South Africans.
Just as I mentioned, all is not well at the Youth Fund.
No?
No.
Surprise us.
Oh, no, I'm not going to surprise you.
Which youth fund?
Kenyan, Youth Fund for Kenya.
The Youth
Man-
Enterprise Development Fund.
Yes, that one.
That one.
Yes, that one. Iko Shida.
Again.
No, I don't think it's again. It's just a continuing story. I think often there's a lull, you don't hear of it, then it rears its head. But there's a lot of reporting about this year they plan to issue more loans than they did before. The repayment rate, they're saying, is at 58%, whereas it's expected to be at 95%.
Sorry, the interest is 90.
No. Repayment rate.
Oh, right,
Yes,
right.
yes,
Okay.
yes. In short, people are not. Remember the 50.
Right,
remember
yes.
the 50% mark we spoke of yesterday. Yeah, these guys are at 58.
So the defaulters are at sort of 42.
Yes, the default is at 42.
Okay.
And this is what they've reported.
This is what they're saying.
This is what they're saying.
All right. We've been taking a look at the headlines, what's been reported. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from the Google Play Store and Apple App Store. Just one subscription fee and you get to access all of Standard Group's publications, plus their pullouts. Today is Tuesday, so of course the Standard has the Financial Tuesdays as well. Good morning, it's 24 minutes past 6 o'clock.
mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
25 after 6, this is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room, we have Eric Latif, Jerry Thorne, Siti Muga, and Nduoko.
Yes, so looking at how things have changed, or as they change, they seem to remain the same, or in some cases get worse. And this morning, if suburbs are the new slums, then are, or rather, if suburbs are the new slums, are slums then the new suburbs? We've seen quite a lot in terms of migration from what would have been called slum areas or lower income areas, specifically in the city of Nairobi. And because of increased income, then comes increased capacity then to be able to live what would be called a better life. And then people are able to earn more. And because of the fact that they're able to earn more, then they have the capacity to do more. And a lot of times it then influences where you live, where you're able to either buy a home or where you're able to rent. And we've seen quite a lot of migration from where we would have called lower market areas to upmarket areas within the city of Nairobi. And because of this, then also there have been complaints that have come along from people who would be seen to be the bourgeois of society, saying the attitude that comes with the migration from people in lower market areas to upmarket areas is something that we cannot take. We seem to have an attitude for chaos and dirt, and an attitude whereby anything goes. But unfortunately, I'm saying this morning that because of the fact that it has not been taken into consideration what is needed when you have this kind of migration, that is what leads to the chaos. And we see that when you have unplanned settlements where people just kind of go and live wherever, you see that a lot of the chaos comes as a result of that. And some of the complaints that we've seen, most recently than not, is that, you know, people then bring the attitudes whereby they would have them in the lower market areas and bring those attitudes of chaos and dirt and disorder to the upmarket areas, and it is something that cannot be accepted. If we want to have clean, tidy, organized cities, then we need to kind of change the way we think, or change the way we live, or change the way we behave when these moves are made. I am saying if there's going to be proper movement from low to upmarket, then also there has to be proper development infrastructure to make sure that we're able to take in everybody.
Are we talking about infrastructure in terms of drainage, sewage, and so on? Are we talking about the attitudes that people migrate with?
Well, I think it's
like those are two different things. One is the government's job.
We come with a ushamba to this.
Well, you've had a few people. There's somebody who was complaining that people are hanging up their washing on the balconies, and it's somewhat an eyesore. Understandably, if you wake up, you don't want to wake up to somebody's sort of laundry. What you have to do, I think, with some of these manners is imagine if everybody did that. So if you're doing something, imagine if every single person did that, what the place would look like, or how.
Is that an attitude issue, or is that a provision issue? I mean, if you don't have anywhere else to hang your clothes.
But look at also, this is what I'm saying. When you
and
this is just
your
the case.
apartment
When you have
has
people
provided
who are
a balcony
living,
somewhere.
You have people who are living in the low market areas. Basically, what they will do is they will just taking the laundry, for example, they will hang where they find. And this happens across the board. Now, this is something that then is carried forward when they're able to earn an extra 40,000 shillings. It's something that is carried over. But then at the same time, you have these high rises that we've seen all mushrooming all over the place, and the amenities are not provided for in terms of what is then enough for the large numbers of people that you see making this move. So now, in terms of, you don't have enough parking, so people will park wherever they find a space. You don't have enough, space for people to hang their clothes, because they come and they move with their families, of course, so they'll hang them where they find the space or what is then convenient for them. Whereas they were used to, there's a space in front of me, there is where I'll hang my clothes. So is it really a thing of, this is my attitude, or this is what I will find that has been provided for me, and then that is what I will use?
I think even where they were coming from, they were not hanging clothes where they've just right there in front of their space. They were hanging clothes where they thought was actually
Who is
convenience.
they? I like this
These
word. The
people
men
that you're
in
talking
grey.
about, people who are
Who is
moving.
they?
Everybody who's moving. It's not that you've come from a place where you'd wake up and just hang clothes out right there at your doorstep. No, you always find a place that's good enough for you to hang your clothes
Where your clothes will dry.
where your clothes will dry and where your clothes will also not interfere with your movement and movement of other people.
I'm going to read a quote which was said by a prominent journalist, and she said, Kilimani, Lavington, Kilileshwa, fast becoming overpriced informal settlements. Driving along, one is shocked by all the laundry hanging from balconies in those leafy suburbs. Right. So, I mean, it's clear. It's both of these things. It's an attitude whereby say, oh, this is an area where you shouldn't do such things. You shouldn't
Why?
hang. Because,
Why? Why? Because it's Kilimani. Because I shouldn't hang my clothes. Because what do you mean?
you should hang your clothes, but you should not hang them on the balcony, according to what has
So
been
where should I
defined
hang
by
them?
people as a kind of bourgeoisie
Which
attitude.
people
Which
are
people
these?
are these? And who are they to determine this is how we operate?
Right,
This
I'm
is-
going to take these people's side.
Take them. Take that side.
Which people?
Because those sentiments do resonate.
The
and
bourgeoisie.
perhaps it's people who appreciate certain things. So, for instance, a view. So, if you hang your clothes and perhaps it's covering the view into the Arboretum if you're in Kilimani or rather Kilileshwa.
Where you
and
live
so
and
on.
should have appreciation for nature.
Yeah, perhaps you got the flat because you like the view that you had and somebody comes and blocks that. So, not everything is about sort of
Why
just
don't
having...
you just climb the roof?
Okay.
Or go to the Arboretum.
Yes.
If you want the Arboretum,
This
walk to
why are
the
you
Arboretum.
interfering with someone's right and how they should use their own balcony?
Well, they're also interfering with your right. in
No, they're
terms
not.
of- absolutely, they are.
What stops you from hanging your clothes on your balcony?
No, they're interfering with your right, perhaps to a good view. Perhaps you paid for that apartment. Maybe you've bought it because there's a very nice view into
All
the park,
right.
the Arboretum Park.
What then?
Somebody comes and hangs clothes directly
I
in
like
front
what
of
So
you're
you.
before
saying.
City goes that, I want to say that, so here the feeling or the sentiment then should be, if you can afford a flat or if you can afford accommodation, whether you're renting it or you have bought it in an area like this, you should be able to then afford the other amenities that come with it, like, a
Like a
washer and
dryer.
a dryer. You see?
I don't know about a dryer.
Well, this is
You
the rider
still
that
wanna
comes.
air your
This is the
clothes.
rider that comes along with the sentiment that you
I
should
think
be able to afford.
there's two
these
elements
other
here.
things.
There's the developer and whether they put sufficient amenities in place in terms of just a hanging line outside and some space for that. Most apartments will have those. Now they do that per household, and they would, unless these people moving in from lower end areas have huge families whereby these houses can't contain.
Can you see that? Can you see
No,
the
I'm
attitude
just
issue?
no. If we go into the developer, he does. He would have put in amenities per household. If it's parking spaces, it's per household. Unless there's a
and
house
this-
that has sort of 10 people
These
living
poor
there.
people coming in from this slum
I didn't
areas
say
with
poor.
millions.
You use that word.
These people coming from lower areas,
Low rent.
low rent
Low
areas,
rent. Poor.
low rent
Settlements.
areas,
Poor.
Low rent
with their
doesn't
large
mean poor.
Poor
families.
people who've moved
Is
up
rent
market.
cheap in
With their
Eastleigh?
large
Eastleigh
families
is quite
of
cheap,
10.
but you have very wealthy people living there.
large families of 10 and coming to us,
And
as
10
guys
now is not the
have
combined
planned-
number of family, but children.
Surely. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then we come back and continue this conversation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's what we are raising basically, Ndu, these are pertinent points. This is what's happening actually in these
It
upmarket
is.
areas. But we've also got to remember these upmarket areas were like quarter-acre bungalows, and now they have been replaced by high-rise
High-rises
buildings.
all over the
So
place,
the
which
former
is
occupiers of the
Actually,
bungalows
they
had
were
hanging
not
areas
even
out
quarter
there.
acre bungalows. They
How?
began as 1 acre bungalow.
1 acre.
Some were even 2 acres. Some were even more because why don't you go into the hour and then we can
Then we
discuss
come
it.
back. Right.
Yes.
So let's take a look at the traffic, not the hour. Right. It's a half hour. 27 minutes to 7 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, good morning. Let's see what's
Traffic.
going on. For some reason, there's heavy traffic on Waiyaki Way from Muthaiga to Waruku. It's quite heavy. We don't know what's going on right now, but we'll get some information as soon as we can and let you know how you can get moving a little bit quicker this morning. Kiambu Road is smooth all the way to CID, snaking all the way when it joins the superhighway, but clear right after the Pangani underpass and along Muranga Hill Road until town. It's going to rain though from all indications, so now is the time to get out if you haven't. T-Mall Langata Road, it's crazy trying to get into the city center. We don't know what is going on, but we'll let you know with that as well in a short while. Getting into the city center from Gong Road also shouldn't be so bad. Approaching the city mortuary roundabout, because we also have some of that traffic coming from I lost the word. Coming from Bagathi Way, but we'll see what that looks like in a short while. Mombasa Road is not so bad right about now. The traffic is flowing smoothly all the way to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout and then into the city center. A small accident, now we know, a small accident is what has caused the traffic at the T-Mall roundabout, and they're trying to get that cleared up. But we'll let you know in a short while. Other than that, it's moving slowly. Remember, Enterprise Road is closed until the 24th, and that means it's going to affect traffic in all directions. You might want to leave early. We'll let you know what that looks like in a short while, just as well.
Spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Yeah, so why is it so hard to have such small, beautiful and clean towns in Kenya? Of course, this was a sentiment put out again by a prominent Nairobian,
Donald Kipkorir.
And some pictures putting out there. Many years ago, Malindi, Naivasha, Nanyuki, Karen, Diani were beautiful before blacks became the majority and brought chaos. Is it corrupt planners or is it us?
The neighborhood disappeared, did it?
The neighborhood disappeared, unfortunately. And we have again
And
what
this
we
is
said.
a Kenyan who made that comment.
This is a black Kenyan who made this comment. All right. So then, of course, there are many things that we can look at and ask ourselves, okay, what exactly has happened? We see this migration, which was bound to happen with an increase in population. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. And also then with the raised profile in terms of income, people definitely earn more. And it's natural. It's a human inclination that as you earn more, you're going to want to do more for yourself. And one of those indicators is also then where you live and you know how you're going to be. Either you own your own home or you pay more in rent because you want to be able to live in a nicer area, as it were. Now, the thing is that, like you said, we had 1 acre, half-acre plots of land where there would be a bungalow. But then people raised those and then put up high-rises.
The way it worked was
and
this.
the attitude came along with the high-rise.
The way it worked was this. There were bylaws, city-town bylaws, that demarcated areas. And one of the things it did was it was understood that by law, the properties in certain areas could only be a certain acreage. For instance, Karen was 5 acres, believe it or not. Now, over time, those bylaws changed. And those bylaws also indicated clearly what sort of buildings you could actually construct in those areas. Like, you do not see high-rises in Karen or Muthaiga. You don't. Okay?
You never used to see high-rises in Kileleshwa or Lavington.
Yes, but
now you do.
Once you change the bylaws, then it means you can cut up that 1 acre into quarter, into an eighth, into whatever. Yes, it's just, yes. So once that happened, and that was bound to happen when you had an increase in population.
Yes.
So there's nothing wrong with that. But also understand that what this gentleman seems to, from what you've told me, find despicable. Yes, it is true. People will carry the habits that they have, not just from where they live, but from the rural areas they came from and from the backgrounds they came from.
But you must the thing is also that these attitudes are also formed upon what they have available to them at some time. If there's no planning, if there's no proper sewage system,
in this city.
There's planning.
No way. Well, there's planning, but the planning has not adopted the
Decide,
changing
Eric.
times.
Is there planning or there's no planning?
There was planning initially, but
There's still
But it did
planning.
not take into
With the
consideration
reclass-
the increased population
Oh, yes,
that we
it
were
did.
seeing.
reclassification
did.
has not changed the planning.
Look, do you know why, for instance, you have something called a road reserve? Because people who plan envision that at some point you may need, among other things, to expand
expand
that
the
road,
road.
because traffic will have increased.
Right.
Planning is not for 2 or 3 years. It takes into account 50 years plus. Yes. So if you're talking about planning, yes. And that's the reason why you will find certain areas you cannot, for instance, build or you can't put up certain structures because it was planned that way.
Right,
Now,
and that's
what
why we
Eric
had
is
a lot of the
referring
destruction
to
of structures.
is we've gotten to a point where the planning has been ignored.
I think the more interesting bit of this debate is the social attitudes as opposed to the actual planning. With regards to the planning, of course, that changes. There's bribery, and you have buildings. Actually, if you remember, Sonko trying to bring down some buildings, even in Kileleshwa, that hadn't received proper planning permission.
And they were actually brought down, yeah.
But what people are complaining about is these attitudes and some of these mannerisms that people move into those areas with. What's interesting is you move there because it's aspirational. It's a nicer area.
Yeah.
Now, the reason it's a nicer area is because of these idiosyncrasies, because of these nuances, the fact that people don't hang their linen on balconies and so forth. But you go there and do exactly that. So, of course,
But are
people
you
will take
assuming
offense.
that everything else, I have adopted everything else when I'm moving to this area, but that habit
Yes.
of
No,
hanging
next-
my clothes
No,
on
you
balcony-
when in Rome,
So
do
I
as the
have-
Romans.
No, the
There's a
next
reason
thing-
you wanted to go there. It was
I have
aspirational.
bought a German vehicle, right? I have. I'm paying more for this. I've actually maybe even bought the apartment. I have 2 cars. I've taken my kids to this other high-end school, but I don't know where to hang my linen.
Apparently not.
No
For a lot of,
way.
no,
Actually,
for a lot
Eric,
of people,
Eric,
for a lot of
Eric,
people,
let's
they
get
don't
to
see
basics.
what's
It's
wrong
because-
with it.
No,
Some
it's
people
because
don't
of the
see that it's-
amenities.
no,
It's
some
because
people don't
Eric,
see
if
that
you
there's
don't
something
provide
wrong
the
with it.
amenities, that is exactly what's
No,
going to
there's
happen.
usually a washing line. There's usually a line
but
to
wait,
hang
usually
clothes.
where?
Wait.
In all
Behind the
apartments,
apartment
So you
downstairs.
find one line. Well, yes. So you have come.
I
with
mean,
it.
let's rewind
I've
this.
come with my 5
we
children.
are
I have one
actually
hanging
discussing
Don't
why
have 5
people should
children.
not hang their linen
In public.
where they
it's
want
not public. It's a space that they have paid for.
their space.
Yes, it's their space. They can hang a dog there if they want.
But
Now,
why-
there are people
okay.
who live or move to these areas who felt that they don't, and that is what this was the appeal in the first place for you to come to this area to say it's a nice place whether you can appreciate nature kind of thing,
And you can hang
want
your
to be
clothes
able
the way
to
you
live in
want.
peace, and we don't want to see literally you air your linen in public, and that was it. We don't want to see it. And they say, okay, this, you have all these settlements, that's nice because you want everybody to be able to live and have an equitable distribution, for example. But some of the things we don't want that to come along with you. If you're
Who is
coming
we?
here,
It's-
if you're
No.
the people who you found there, if you're coming,
I have found
That
no
is
one here.
you're
This is a
coming-
new block of
if you're
apartments.
coming-
All of us have moved
Balagan.
in.
Nonsense.
No,
The
if
rest
you're
of you
coming-
guys-
No, it's
if
not
you're
utter
coming-
nonsense.
The rest
It's
of you guys,
utter
who are
that's the
across the world.
undiluted nonsense.
and that's the attitude that if you're coming, then maintain.
You want to join a club, you follow the rules, and you find that actually across members'
that's not a
clubs
club.
as well.
That's residence.
It's the equivalent of a club in terms of the area, the neighborhood.
No.
The reason
No.
the reason why the residents of that area have that attitude is because they had 1 acre and they had huge
No,
spaces.
No.
In
No,
fact,
a lot of the residents
they had
And
huge-
those people don't
they
have
had-
an acre. If they had an acre, they wouldn't be living in those apartments.
Yeah, most of them
Okay?
sold
No,
their,
some of
their,
them,
their
some of them,
acreage.
some of them are
Are
still
good.
remaining in that. They sold off half of it and they're living in this other half. And that half that they sold, they allowed the person who's coming to build,
Develop.
to develop, to put up a full block of apartments. And then you start complaining, oh, I sold this land to these people. Now they've put up 10 floors. What did you expect?
sold it.
No,
You
they're not
sold it.
complaining about that. I think in
Now
Kileleshwa they've stopped complaining about high-rise flats. I think
Now
it's,
they are
it's
complaining that the
generally
people who've moved
a
in
concrete
into those
jungle.
high-rise flats
What they're
are
complaining
living
about,
this way.
yes, and I
Because
can understand it. You've moved
there is
into an
no
area. You were
hanging
aspiring.
area.
You were aspiring. Who says there's no hanging area?
Those people are saying that. That's
Which
what you think.
people?
The people who are hanging clothes
They've
there.
told you this?
Yes. Have
No,
they
I
told you
think-
otherwise?
I think
Have
no,
they told
you
you
will find
otherwise?
in
Yes,
most
they've told me
apartments.
this.
They told you somebody
Look
was
at-
hanging their
we-
clothes.
Look at the comments.
wait,
Look at the
Yes.
comments
No,
in those
You
tweets.
will
Look
find
at the
in
comments.
most apartments.
You just
there
read a
will
comment
be-
here,
there
right,
will
by a
be-
journalist. Look at the comments in those tweets.
In most
They'll
apartments,
tell you
there
that.
will be somewhere where you can hang your clothes, and if not, they need to demand for
Not
it.
su-
The
not
solution,
sufficient.
the solution is not to hang your clothes on the balcony. It's an eyesore. Simple as that. If everybody did these things, it would look really ugly. It's a horrible existence, a horrible environment. I don't want to wake up and look at your undergarments when I wake up.
Does it occur to you that people who hang those clothes do not share those sentiments?
There are people who
but they have moved into an area where that is the predominant sentiments.
Yes.
This is my point today. The
Yes,
fact that
I've
that is what
understood
was
your point.
appealing.
Have you
It is
done a
those
Nyumba Kumi
sentiments
to actually try and
it is those
inculcate them into your
sentiments.
culture and tell them this is how we live here. Welcome to the neighborhood. This is how we
Okay,
live
so maybe
here.
they don't know. That's a defense. I agree with
It's
you.
not that they
Perhaps
don't know. Why should they know? It's like telling me that if someone goes to some high-end restaurant, they must eat with a fork and knife. Have you gone there to eat or to eat with a fork and knife?
I suppose it would be perhaps off-putting to other diners if you didn't. If you were eating with your hands,
They
and it
can
was
move
grubby.
out and go to another restaurant.
No, but
Oh,
you have
you
come.
were
You've
offended.
come to a high-end restaurant.
No.
So it's for you to perhaps do as the Romans
If
follow the
the
etiquette.
only
There's a
reason-
reason behind all this etiquette. There's
That
a reason. It's to make your neighbors comfortable. And that's what was most appealing when you aspire to move to certain areas. It's not just the area in terms of location and its proximity to the CBD or what have you. There's a sort of air about the area. There's a sense either of community. There's a characteristic to the area. So as Donald Kipkorea here talks about suburbia Karen, and then he talks about the invasion of the kiosks, the hawkers.
and the chaos
What,
that
this
black
tough-nosed
Africans have
ideas
brought.
about how life
Seriously.
should be lived.
So,
I think that was a
Bunk.
bit far for him, for sure. I mean, because I think he reached and went to a depth there.
This
unfortunately,
gentleman that you
we
speak
shouldn't
of, what's
have.
his background?
He's a
What?
lawyer.
He's born out of royalty.
No.
far from
He comes from a
far
place
from
called Cape
a
Town.
little bit
Cape Town.
nouveau, so you can see
The
what
thing
his
is,
inspirations were.
there's of course,
aspirations.
I think without being very too facetious about this, there is of course a point that's being raised on how these places have been put up. But I think the issue is not really the new tenants or residents of the area; it's the developers and the authorities. Why don't we have checks and balances to ensure that you have got enough suitable facilities?
I think
People are
because
parking
one major
on the
thing,
road because you don't want to leave your car on the road just because.
people park on the roads.
People park on the road because there's no space.
People have their children playing in the street because the compound, the little one that was left, is actually taken up by vehicles.
Yeah,
No,
Eric
this is
does have
true.
a point because
Yeah.
when you plan for a certain number of people to reside in a place, there are certain amenities you must provide. Yes,
and this is
it's
what
part
we are
of the plan.
saying.
You must.
In terms of the planning, there's also been a failure.
No,
because
the failure is in people who are supposed to enforce it because
It's enforcement.
Yes, if they
but
don't
if you-
ensure,
right.
And the grabbing that happened. So some play areas, areas that had been demarcated in the original plan as playgrounds have been grabbed. It's an apartment block.
It's an apartment block, and
It's a school has also been grabbed. You know, it's also another apartment block.
No,
so
but
you
by the
find that
time
you
they're
don't have
putting up a
amenities.
structure and they're building this, they themselves know that they're not able to provide what is necessary. But they put it up anyway because
the
what they're after,
businessman, yeah.
what they're after is the rent.
Yes.
So they're not going to provide these amenities because it's not in their interest to do so. But then also, they want rent, and they're going to, and that has been the complaint by a lot of people. Even some of the comments that we see as response to this has been, what you expect us to do when you have little spaces, and I'm coming with a family of 5, and I basically have to turn in the opposite direction to see what is behind me, kind of thing. It's really small, and what you've provided for me as the developer or as the landlord is really not enough for me to do what I need to do. So where I find space is what I'm going to be able to do with it.
Then the question
so it's
is,
a
must you
twofold
move?
thing here. Yeah, now you have to move. You got some money. Why wouldn't you want to oppress? You have.
Maybe it's actually an attitude issue as well of the buyer or the person who's moving into this area. Why are you moving to a place where you feel that the amenities are not enough?
The example that we are
Let
following.
me open up the phone line.
Yes.
0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. We're talking about the growth of flats. Say it again. You had a very nice phrase.
Well, definitely looking at, there's a movement of people from what you want to call low market to up market.
Low rent.
Okay, fine. Low rent. And then we see this movement, coming out, and you have a higher population coming in what was, upmarket previously. But there's not enough. And we have the attitude that, look, you've come with your attitudes here of how you're going to basically dirty up a place. And I'm saying that there needs to be more in terms of provision. And maybe that will help people, act as the neighborhood requires.
Phone line again, 0719 012 600, 12 minutes to 7.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So, why don't we have those amenities in place anyway? And when you're moving to such a place, and you can clearly see, so I have 2 cars, I have 10 children. What's the first thing that you want to check? Do you have enough bedrooms here? Do you have enough parking?
I think one does all that, Eric.
Is there enough laundry hanging area? So if you don't have that, then don't take
Are
up
they really
this.
taking all those things into consideration, or is it like, yes, we've come to a place where my profile will be lifted because I live in this particular area?
It's close to my
close to
children's
where?
new school.
No, but surely you do go and inspect the building.
Of course.
You will know what it has and what it doesn't have. And if you have a wife, she will want to know the size of that kitchen. She will also want to understand certain things about the men may not be concerned
Stereotyping.
Actually,
If you have a wife, she'll want to know the size of the kitchen.
yes, she does.
Yes, that's a fact.
Yes, she
no,
does.
it's not. That is stereotyping.
I have a wife, he has a wife. We're telling you.
I have been a wife and never been into the kitchen, so...
Well, you are
There
the...
we
go.
well,
No. It's important we don't
It's not-
stereotype.
no,
A woman
no.
does not belong in the kitchen. Moving
But-
on.
No, I'm not moving on from that point of view.
No,
When
you can't
go
say if you have
into
a wife,
house-
she'll want to know the size of the
she
kitchen.
is likely to.
No.
And so who determines when you go into a house, who do you think bothers about the size of the kitchen in the family? The children?
It could be you or her.
No.
You don't
very
stereotype
rarely.
and reinforce those
Very
stereotypes.
rarely. Do,
In the
you're a
African,
woman.
in the African
Do,
setting,
you're a woman, tell me.
in the
Give me your
African,
view. When you're
now
moving.
let me answer now, small. In the African setting, usually it would be stereotype or not, it would be the woman who would go in and see, okay, how would I be able to operate within this space?
Yes, she'd look at the rooms. You see,
He who finds a good wife.
Oh, stop it! See, now you're going very far.
Go on, City. And then,
the point I was making was
Yes.
that people do look into the houses and determine what the house has. Now, what we are emulating are people who live in the West and live in high-end areas, whether it is a closed community, gated community, but usually they have an association. So when a new neighbor comes in, one of the things they do is they induct you. They actually take time to explain to you.
This is how we do things
In this
here.
neighborhood, this is how this is done.
This is how we do
This is
it.
how this is done. It's explained to you. This is how the rubbish, this is what we do. We contribute this way to the watchman, we contribute to the environment. All that is explained so that you actually understand. It's like a welcoming committee into that particular neighborhood. Now, many of these new neighborhoods do not have anything of that sort.
This is
All
because
you
at the
do
end of the day,
is
it's commercial.
move in.
It's
You find
commercial.
your neighbor.
You pay your rent, you pay your deposit, you move in.
Yes.
Anything else that comes along goes, and that's where you can see some of these attitudes or some of these sentiments came. That it never used to be like this, and there's a certain kind of maintenance that we want to uphold in these areas. So if you're coming in, whether you've earned a few extra shillings or not, this is what needs to be maintained in these areas. Because again, like Jerry said, there was an appeal. There was an appeal that had already been established, and there was aspiration for people who are moving into this area. So there's certain things that you want to maintain. Now, unfortunately, what that does is you kind of create a class system, whether you want to or not. But unfortunately, you do, because you say then this area should be left for certain people who understand a certain way of life,
No.
whether you have an extra shilling or not, and understand a certain way to do things. So, if there is no space to hang your clothes, then rather than hang them on the banister or the balcony, you make a request. You see what I'm saying? And say it's not enough for us. Make a request for some extra
For
to be
extra
put
provision.
in, or don't move in. This, and it's real. This is what people are saying.
People who have that luxury are people who build their own houses.
There's also something called visual pollution. You have noise pollution. You also have visual pollution. And it's, I've mentioned it, either an eyesore or the interference of sort of the aesthetics of an environment or an area. Usually it's the complaining of sort of wires, telephone wires, as we used to have them, or electricity wires. And it just impairs one's ability to enjoy a vista or a view. So this is what I've been arguing. If I live in this area, perhaps there's a certain view, there's a certain vista that I wanted, and you're coming and impairing that. And this is why you will find people complaining. It is an eyesore to see those clothes on the balcony. There's no doubt about that. And they could be preventing others from seeing the views that they've paid to live in.
And
paid
water
for to
jerry
live in.
cans.
What's the jerry cans in the balcony? Because there's no water.
Because there's
Then
no
you
water.
have to. There's no water.
At
Or
what
parking
point
or
does
parking.
someone's right
Is
to
the mother of
begin?
Or you
invention.
have people honking at 5 in the morning because they're trying to get the neighbor to move their vehicle because they want to try and get to work on time. Kinds of things that you would never hear or see before you had this influx of people.
I think these people are less considerate. I hate to say.
Who's these people?
The people
The
who are moving
newcomers.
into these areas, yes. Less
The new
considerate
money finder.
to the peculiarities of where they're moving into. Perhaps it's due to lack of knowledge. Perhaps certain things have been normalized for them. CT, the other day we're in the car and we saw somebody throw away a banana peel. And you said he doesn't see anything wrong with it.
He doesn't. It's the for many
Right.
people,
Now
it's the
imagine if
most normal
everybody did
thing.
that.
It's a biodegradable.
That's what I told Jerry. It's biodegradable. What's the big issue here? I even explained
But
it further.
imagine
You know,
if everybody else did that.
she
That's
told me
how
half
you've
the
got
story. I said, look, most people who come to town come from a rural background. And what you call a snack is a banana or something that is biodegradable.
Avocado.
So when they toss it out, no harm done. But that habit of tossing out has come in even when in the days of plastic. So you go to a town and you find plastics everywhere. And it's a complete eyesore. But the habit of tossing things was because they came from that background. Now, you carry that habit into an environment where what you're using is not biodegradable. You now litter, and now you actually create an eyesore. It's not their intention, but I also mentioned that it requires a re-education. Most people, if someone is eating, the natural thing is to throw a banana peel out of the window. It doesn't occur to them to have something in your vehicle, if you have a vehicle, in which you can actually deposit that
So
particular.
it's socialization.
They have to. These things have to be
Manners.
taught.
They-
I
they'll
mentioned
also
in this
have to
very
learn.
show
They'll
that
also-
at independence, when the Africans moved into what had previously been European houses, and their background previously had been a one-roomed house. In the rural areas, it was a hut, one room. Then somebody suddenly presents you with 6 rooms. What on earth do you do with 6 rooms?
They all stay in one room.
I mean, it's 6 rooms. What do you do with 6
Stare at
rooms?
the other 5.
So you bring relatives to fill it.
CT, no.
But I
it's too
understand-
much space.
Looking at what you've talked about, what you've talked about, socialization now, for example.
Yes.
Look at that vis-a-vis somebody who is only interested in the commercial aspect. Somebody wants to get people in there, and you have your rent on a monthly basis, whatever. You're not really concerned. I mean, once they pay, you're done.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah,
really
yeah.
concerned about how they operate, what
How
they
they
do, whether I'm
live.
bringing in, whether I'm mixing classes or middle class, higher, upper class. Nobody is concerned about that. They're really concerned about pay
I
your
want my
rent,
rents.
let's move on, let's go.
But look,
But then the mix and match, which other people then drive by and see,
And you
or
may
other people who
find-
are resident there previously see this coming.
You may
For
find-
them, they're wondering what on earth is going on here.
The landlord is actually a former resident of this area who's just moved on to
Probably.
another
He has
higher.
also moved.
No,
I hope he's
He or
behaving
she-
himself wherever
he or
he's
she
moved
has
to.
also moved
This
to another
landlord
area.
has been living here, living in those, in those pristine conditions. But now, because he's moved out, he doesn't care. It's a thing of also,
This is what
I
I'm
don't care.
saying.
It
The
doesn't
focus
affect
is
me.
what's entering into my pocket.
As long as it doesn't affect me, what's the problem? But also the issues of kiosks, surely. I mean, you can understand where Donald Kipkorir was coming from, for instance. I mean, kiosks
That's,
by the roadside.
enterprise.
Where you have people who operate these kiosks actually living
let me tell you the
And they
genesis.
live
The
there
genesis
as
of
well.
these kiosks is when the likes of Donald Kipkorir moved to Karen, because before it was people on 5 acres, usually or ordinarily, predominantly, it would have been settlers, so Muzungus. And then, of course, Africans, it was an aspirational area to move into. It was serene, suburbia, green, quiet, peaceful, posh, an area code. So the more Africans moved into that area, with acreage being divided, I think now it's half an acre you can have or an acre. Of course, then it creates business for these kiosks. So it's these very people who are complaining that have caused these kiosks to mushroom, because the Muzungus were not using the kiosks. They would go into a supermarket and buy what they want.
What were
They
they-
weren't using the hawkers. They would go into a supermarket and buy all of
And they used to have staff quarters.
now, yes. Now,
And
what's
now we don't have
interesting is the
self-quarters.
Muzungus are now moving to Nanyuki, and then the Africans are following them there.
And you understand that it's because of a raise in income.
Sorry,
it's
I'm
also
gonna be
because
honest.
a rise in income. And interestingly enough, in today's standard, there's data that has been collated, and it's shown that people who used to earn a certain amount of money have actually increased, and you have a whole block of people who
There's
are earning
a growing middle class.
Oh, absolutely. And this is actually shocking data, because people are, even with the way the economy is bad, and people have been complaining, people are earning a lot more. And the first thing that they decide to do, based on this data, it's today, and the first thing that they decide to do is move to an upmarket area. First thing.
Of course.
After that
Change
is
your
when they put their
address.
children in more expensive schools. But the first thing is this. So you can imagine somebody who was living...
Are they considered safer, these upmarket areas?
Yes,
Perhaps there's more
and that's one of the
security?
things that's actually in this report. Safety, security, and of course the whole
Better living conditions
ambiance
as well.
of peace and
Serenity.
Yes, interestingly enough. So without taking into consideration where they have come from before, that is not. It's not even their
still
problem.
say the bigger problem for me is not these people who are moving. Let's call them migrants. It's actually the authorities.
Can we stop
It's
calling
the
them these
authorities.
people and
It's
say
the authorities.
Kenyans.
when fellow Kenyans move from okay,
Yes.
from what is considered
All right.
a low rent area,
It's 7 o'clock.
yes.
Sugar and spice and everything I Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
Right, it is the Christmas season, and people are moving quite. There's a lot of travel, so please definitely be careful about your movements. All right, we saw there was an accident just around the T-Mall area. There are police on the scene, but that is affecting traffic inbound and outbound. Interestingly enough, trying to get onto Bagathi Way is going to be a bit of a challenge right about now, seeing that they've just arrived and trying to get us moving. And this then affects traffic as you spill over onto Ngong Road. All right, we had some traffic right around Wayaki Way coming off of James Gishuru. Let's see what happens in a short while concerning that. Looking at Thika Road, it was easy street a while ago. Definitely is about to change as we get to the 7 o'clock hour right around now. Everywhere else seems to be A-okay. So far, so good. Not so bad. Dagoretti North is a mess, unfortunately. There's traffic coming off of that, and it's going to spill over onto Ngong Road. The Thika Superhighway is very good all the way up until Gara. Ngong Road, like we said, junction towards Karen at the Dagoretti area, we have some problems there. Let's see what it looks like in a short while, but for now, nothing too much to complain about. Likely to see some chock-a-blocked action in Mombasa Road around Syokimau. We'll let you know in a short while.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up,
So
not
as
down.
Ndu Oko told us, it's the
This
fifth day
is
of
the
Christmas.
Situation
Wherever
Room,
you're traveling over
the
this festive
only way
season,
to
you'll
start
find us.
your day.
94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, Malindi 97.7, and Nyeri 90.9. We live stream the show as well, www.spicefm.co.ke and Facebook Spice FM KE. We're talking about, social amenities in upmarket area, what is considered upmarket areas. Let's actually talk about the entire Nairobi. Why should we have people moving from one area to another?
Well, because of the way it was, interestingly enough, for every, and I think there was a study done of Nairobi a while ago, and for every what would be upmarket area, adjacent to that is then also what would be known as a slum area, or lower settlement kind of living. And I think in every, I think around the city you could actually point to that, and there was always something that you could then find. So then, of course, for a lot of people, the settlements, the lower ended living is what people could afford, because what they could put in
Actually,
their pocket.
many of them are informal settlements that have come up. If you go around areas like Runda, you go to Muthaiga, you go to Karen now, you'll find those informal settlements. Whereas you should be having formal settlements. Yes, they are low rent areas, but
then
formal.
the amenities are available, and
Everything
it's
should be
neat
there.
and orderly, etc.
You should have schools, you should have a dispensary, you should have
This is the
proper
thing.
roads, you should have water
and
pipes,
this is where you
have
should be,
everything.
so that wherever you are in the city, then you
Live,
still
you're
have
comfortable.
your serene.
Please
It's
bear in
serene
mind
and
that
such.
the people who work in these high rent areas, it was assumed that those who lived in those areas and had workers would provide
Would
accommodation.
house them.
Yes. That was part of the reason. And one of the things that you also have to bear in mind is that what we call the high rent areas were, in many instances, rural areas.
Yeah.
And when the town encroaches onto those areas, there are individuals who still own their so-called ancestral land or rural land in those areas. That's the first thing that you need to consider. It may not look like that, but it is so. Economically, those who study economics claim, and they explain it, and they say that these informal settlements, as we call them, arise from the fact that these high rent areas also create employment.
Absolutely.
More employment. And again, because they don't also provide sufficient residence for these people, then people will provide alternative residential areas
So
to suit
yeah,
their
you make a
needs.
lot of sense this morning, CT. So if you look at Donald Kip Courier's this morning, if you look at Donald Kip Courier's tweet where he talks about the nuisance that matatus and kiosks are in, say, the Karen area, what would have happened is exactly what you said, whereby people are now living there, but they don't provide the staff quarters. So you'd have people from informal settlements needing to come into the area. So you need the matatus. They perhaps need to have some lunch. So you'll have kiosks. It creates a whole new enterprise in the area. And then, of course, it's something that the residents, so the people employing these travelers and consumers of the kiosk goods, the people employing them don't enjoy the environment. So the solution is, if you're going to move into Karen, make sure you have enough room to have staff quarters if you want to maintain it for what it is. So you can't have your cake and eat it, basically.
Well, yes, the planning may even have it, but it's the enforcement. For instance,
The enforcement.
there was for the longest time a municipality law that demanded that for every structure, every building you put up, you must have a water collection point and a water storage point, meaning a gutter and a tank. Now, that was in addition to being provided for water, tap water being provided for. Now, if you look around the new structures that we have, those things aren't there.
No.
Yes. So it's not a question of the planning. Again, it's enforcement. But let's take this discussion further and ask ourselves a simple question. People who moved into these areas that we now look at, remember, if you're talking about Runda, those were coffee farms. And not too long ago. Karen, the entire Karen was a coffee farm. Not too long ago. So that's what people do. There are people who actually want to live in an area where there's a lot of space.
Right.
So, and with Karen, even
Or more space than
yes,
where
they
they're
have.
used to.
So
Right.
when they find that Karen is being encroached on and the acreage that one owns is becoming less, so you have more neighbors than you actually want, then you move further. That's what people do, because you'll sell it at a premium and you'll have enough money to move elsewhere. There are people who like that amount of space. It's just the way they're inclined. Now,
I think most people like space.
not really.
There's people who enjoy being in a concrete
Yes,
jungle and cramped.
yes, they do.
there are people who
If
actually enjoy that.
if you've been born in an area where you have nothing but space, lots and lots of it, it's not something you really appreciate because it's what you know, it's what you live with. So you actually like the idea of having many people around you. That it's new to you and it gives you a sense of a thrill of sorts. So yes,
I don't know, CT, you're stretching this.
I'm
a
not
bit.
stretching it.
People
There
get
are
a
people
thrill,
who
like
have
an
grown up
adrenaline
in
rush
yes.
by living in a concrete jungle.
Yes,
by living
they are very
in
happy.
cramped
Because that-
apartments.
Yes, because that concrete jungle has
It's okay
electricity.
because of the fact that it's total opposite to what they were used
No,
to having.
CT is saying because of electricity. You can have electricity.
I'd
Because
actually
of
just
water
began-
running
I
out
had
of
began
water.
the
Okay, no,
discussion.
but let's be honest. Because of water running out of a tap, because the people who were
There's
then,
electricity.
people
There's-
then who were used to
Yes.
the carts, the carts that would bring water essentially, because you have a tap but you don't have
But
water
you would
running
have
out
that
of it.
in a space that's not cramped and that's not a concrete jungle. So
And Jerry, I think your knowledge of the rural areas perhaps isn't very accurate.
it's very good, actually.
No.
Very accurate.
Most rural
Densely
areas.
populated rural areas.
Yes.
He's talking about the sparsely populated ones.
No,
Yes.
I'm the shags, right?
No, in Jerry, your experience is the shags you come from.
Mm-hmm.
Other shags do not have the amenities that you may assume everybody has. And what they have in plenty is space.
Mm-hmm.
That they have in plenty. And at night, they have what they also have in plenty is darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So, when somebody comes into town and there's bright lights and there's water available readily, all these things. You know, this is the 21st century, and in this country, we are still discussing
So the
problems
sense
that
of the
people have
city.
getting water to date. So those are the rural areas I'm talking about. Now, when such a person, first of all, remember in the rural areas you come from not too big a structure. You come into town. If this person makes good and they moved to an area that is considered a high end, they also carry the habits that they had
With
from
them
the
to
previous.
this,
Yes,
exactly, they
yes.
do.
So
Which is now what a lot who have been resident in those areas have seen
no,
as
people who
unpalatable.
long moved into those areas and forgot the habits they came with, because most of these natives who want to claim that they're
they're
better
bourgeois.
schooled and better
They're bougie.
socialized. It's just that in living memory, they've forgotten the rural backgrounds that they
That
all
they
had.
come from.
Yes. So now that they've acquired these new habits, they forget it is acquired. Give
So
these
over
indivi-
time,
yes, give
after
these-
some time,
give
they
these
will not be
individuals
hanging their
time
time.
to
laundry in
acquire.
public.
Give these individuals time, and they'll be hanging the undergarments in their
No.
bedrooms. Not
No. CT,
Not on the balcony.
it was acquired because when they got there, that was the predominant mannerism. Now, what's happening is the people who are moving in, because they're moving in en masse and in such numbers, that is now overtaking the current sort of habits and mannerisms of those people. So they won't change. It's not going to take the
Have
same
you-
trajectory.
some
When
of
you
these-
move in there, you would have been one individual and you see nobody else is hanging their clothes and linen on the balcony. So you realize, actually, I won't do this. But now, with the current going ons and with the trends we're seeing, everybody is hanging their clothes on the balcony. So it becomes the norm. And the poor one person who's been living there and perhaps acquired these manners, as you say, is then drowned by these
By everybody else.
plebs.
This conversation continues on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE is a Facebook page. Tag us on Twitter at Spice FM KE. Our individual Twitter handles at Nyeri, Thorn, at Ndu Oko, at CT Mugan, at Eric Latif. Hashtag The Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. 12 minutes after 7. Good morning.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nduoko, Nyeri, Thorn, CT Muga. Bwana sio sana.
Oh, right.
Good morning, Eric.
What did he say?
Bwana asifiwe
Bwana asifiwe
sana.
sana.
Yes, it is. That is actually considered a normal greeting in Kenya. The other normal greeting is God is good, and then people chime in
Jerry?
all the time.
And all the time,
God is good. And then they say, because that is his nature. They go,
Amen.
yes. Now, it it's been institutionalized in this country. So Eric, greet me again.
Bwana asifiwe.
Amina.
God is good.
Okay, we're putting
go
it
together.
CT.
Since we are talking about God, I was about to tell you go hang, but the point is made. This is a country where God is everyone's personal friend, and everyone believes that God is good all the time, and everyone likes to believe that just because you chant it, it is so, and just because you say you're a Christian, you are of necessity a Christian. However, Christianity has its tenets, Christianity has its bylaws, Christianity has ways by which people understand it. And one of those ways that Christianity has been understood in this country is that it's a money-making venture. It's one of those career paths that you really don't need any qualifications except a declaration. All you need to do is declare yourself a man of God, but it gets even better. You can even confer upon yourself any qualifications that you like. Every once in a while, you hear somebody begins as pastor. Give them enough months, they will become an apostle. If you give them even enough months, they'll become a bishop. What I haven't heard is how many of them have become popes. But we are at the level of them becoming bishops. But the other thing that characterizes the Christian church in this country, especially the evangelical variety of it, is that it's not just a growth industry, but it's a huge money-making industry. We have a whole bunch of people who've gone into what we call the prosperity gospel, where somehow they seem to want to trade God's qualities, God's nature, the things that God enables people who want them. He enables them to get them for free. They put a price tag to it. But we don't have regulations for any such things in this country, apart from registration. And because of this, very many citizens have been taken advantage of. So, apart from being this wonderful faith that people should subscribe to, the only thing that the Christian church seems to be characterized by in this country is diversity and intolerance. Why do I say intolerance? If you look at the history of the Christian church, the one thing that characterized the early church, again, was intolerance. People who didn't like what others were doing and so persecuted them. With the time, it got even further when we got into a point where Christianity became the norm in many Western countries. Again, diversity appeared, and with it, intolerance. People moved out of their own countries because of this same intolerance. People moved away from countries like France, England, Holland. You may not think so now, but these were Christian countries during their time. And what is of interest is that intolerance that was meted upon them in their country. When they moved to the countries that they now settled in, they now presented the same intolerance to the people they found there. This is my postulation this morning. Christianity has become a business. And the business that it promises is to take you to a heaven where most of the people who promise you to take you there have never been to.
What qualification? Aren't we all the children of God?
It's a fair question. He was a carpenter.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Okay, qualifications.
What trade did he have?
That's
No,
qualification.
not trade. We're talking
Carpenter.
about
What skill did he have?
Carpenter.
What qualification in
did
preaching
he
and
have?
in preaching
Because
the
we're
word of
talking
God?
about these preachers who
Jesus
turned into
was taken to
apostles.
the temple at the age of
12.
was it 12? Yes, and he was there. He was taught religion from the age of 12 by the high priests themselves. So yes, he had training.
Okay, I mean, I could say the same. I went to Sunday school from the age, I think, of 5, and catechism classes from age 5 up until 13. So does that give me the same qualification as Jesus? If we're looking at qualifications only.
You understand
Because-
you understand religion and the doctrine of religion. Yes.
You could start your own church if that's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
You
So
could.
qualification isn't important. If
It is
Jesus,
important.
the founder of this religion, if he himself didn't have qualifications.
Why don't we give this
Surely-
thing perspective and time, shall we? In that particular point in time, people didn't have degrees. They didn't exist. So essentially, when you were trained, you became an apprentice.
Right.
You studied under someone, and the qualification you had, the equivalent of universities, was the scholar under whom you studied. If he was called Gamaliel, a well-known scholar, then you studied under Gamaliel, and he was known to be a scholar of repute. So that was where you gained your qualifications from studying from the people who understood it.
Okay, so there were scholars, there were people who were more qualified than Jesus.
There are people who had studied the law.
Right. Okay.
The thing you need to understand about the Christian faith, the Christian faith as we know it only came into being after Jesus had died.
Yes.
But he was the equivalent of an evangelist. If we put sort of the two times side by side, what he was doing was preaching something very new. Of course, today you have the prosperity preaching. He was preaching sort of what I would call Eastern teachings, somewhat Buddhist. This turn the other cheek, and as opposed to an eye for an eye, and so on. So he was bringing something very novel, something very new, and very sort of counterintuitive, going against the grain of what was conventional wisdom then.
Actually, yes and no. Yes, in that the way he presented it, in fact, what was the talking point and the point of disagreement was when he called himself the Son of God. That's where now serious serious disagreement came about. But
are we not all the children of God, or how does it work?
Are you a child of God?
What did they tell you in Sunday school?
You're a child of God.
Precisely. So
in the same way Jesus was the Son of God, so you're the Son of God too, Eric, and you're the daughter
Jesus was
of
the
God.
Messiah, the one who had been prophesied about.
Actually,
well, the Jews don't believe that. They're still waiting for their Messiah. So all this is very subjective.
And that's why there was a discussion. That's why there was a heated debate at that point when it was actually declared this is the Messiah. He's the one we've been waiting for. And then others were saying
they disagreed.
No. They disagreed and they said, no,
actually,
Messiah
the scholars and the people, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the people who actually held sway, the scholars of the time who understood the teachings of the Old Testament and the books that they believed were from God, many of them disagreed. A good number of them agreed.
Actually,
so they were divided on the issue.
There was actually a vote for it in Parliament under Constantine, where he said all those in favor of the motion of declaring Jesus to be the Son of God say aye. All those against the motion say nay. And the ayes had it. And that's how it came into being. It was actually debated in Parliament and decided.
There you go.
So this notion of divine agency was actually decided by men
but why did
and
they
women men.
Let me ask the question. Why did they have the discussion in the first place?
Because
he was claiming this. And of course he had this big following and it was disruptive to the Roman Empire. And there was debate about it. But it was actually decided by men in the equivalent of Parliament. So the equivalent of our MPs rather. And they decided that Jesus was the Son of God.
So if we talk about qualification in the modern day, what would that be?
The only country that I know of, where the state has actually structured it is Rwanda. In other countries, why that structure has not been necessary is because they are formal churches, and the churches tend to self-regulate. Before you are able to actually be allowed talk to any congregation, there's a certain basic training you must have, and they must give you license.
To register as a charity as well. There's stipulations.
No, the church already exists. You, the individual who wants to work.
But you have a lot of I remember Nigerians starting up churches in London. Now, with them, no offense.
Oh, no, please carry on.
The offense is coming, but please carry on.
I said, let's move.
The offense is on the way.
Now, with them, the safeguards there would be the fact that by the time you're registering as a charity, there's a few sort of things that you have to go through. And that's where the checks would come into place. There's a lot of new churches that have come up.
Every government on this planet has rules by which they expect any organization to follow if they wish to be registered for whatever function. But many church organizations have their own internal rules that determine or give you by which they conduct their business. Whether it's the Catholic Church, whether it's the Anglican Church, the Lutheran, all of them.
And how you rise from one level to the other, from
it's
a
all
pastor
very,
to
very,
a
very
deacon
clear.
to a bishop.
All that.
In those
clear.
formal
But
churches.
that's informal, sort of traditional, conventional,
and that's what
Orthodox
he's talking
churches.
About. That's what he's
but
talking
in today's churches, with this prosperity preaching, it's not, you can set up shop anywhere.
Prosperity preaching is even in formal churches. You're talking about evangelical churches who have a Pentecostal leaning. Now, this is where the free for all has come in. Because someone stands in a street corner and preaches. You do not need a license to stand in the street corner to preach. Not in this country. People just preach. If they have enough of a gathering, with time you then form what you call a formal church and you register it. Many of these...
pitch a tent.
Yes. That's how you begin. You pitch a tent. It's growth. And the numbers grow and grow and grow and grow.
What sort of restrictions would you want put on? Because with Kagame, what he did is he closed down. I mean, there was 700 churches in Kigali alone. So he closed a lot of them down, and then he put these stipulations in terms of academic qualifications. At the very least, you perhaps need a diploma if you're going to open up a church in theology. Does that not then isolate certain individuals who feel they have a spiritual calling but are perhaps not particularly academic, and perhaps, given Kenya where we are as a young nation, not even educated, so illiterate perhaps?
It would work perfectly if we didn't have cases of people who claim to be men of God turning out to be con men who are pretending to be men of God.
This is the problem,
and
because,
fleecing
and
innocent
fleecing
citizens.
people, because this is the thing. There has been an abuse of this, would we say, institution, because people then have realized that even if you do have a calling, then you see the fact that there are people who are desperate for some kind of hope, for some kind of anything outlet. So people are absolutely desperate for a way out of the circumstances that they find themselves in, whether it is financial, economical, whatever. And so then people with their calling, as it were, then prey on innocent people, make promises that they know they cannot keep, ask them to bring whatever little they have and it will be multiplied. So there's an abuse of that, and that is where the problem is.
And I think, to be honest, I'm going to criticize the government today. As a whole, every government in Kenya so far, I feel perhaps they've turned a blind eye to the setup here, because it does give people, it's a channel of hope. It's a platform perhaps to vent as well, and people get some spiritual nourishment in an economy that perhaps can't give everybody the basic needs and what they need. People then rely on hope, and the government does need people to be hopeful. So you see they're very lenient. They show a lot of clemency towards these churches. I'm sure even when it comes to taxing them, it's not something they push for. So you have these churches unregulated, springing up everywhere, of course, indoctrinating people. I came across a video clip, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where a pastor bathes, or, he's in a bathtub, not quite a tub, a drum actually, and he washes himself, and then he makes people drink that water as holy water. And you've seen Pastor
Was that in Kenya, though?
It was in Kenya, I think. the clip I saw it looked like Kenya.
Maybe somewhere in Southern Africa.
I didn't go into
Southern
it.
African
No, we've seen
pastors-
worse. We've
pastors
seen
have done-
pastors slapping people, throwing people on
Southern
the floor.
Africa.
No, I've seen it here. Wasn't Pastor Nganga and Snoop Dogg in some interaction because of him
He wasn't
slapping people?
He wasn't
What
slapping
was
the
he
pastor,
doing?
he was
It
slapping
sounds
the
funny,
demons.
but it's terrible. It actually is. When you see this kind
These
of thing
people are
happening,
so desperate.
people are desperate, and you have people walking for kilometers to go to this house of God or whatever to receive a promise that they say, come on Wednesday. As Titi said before, come on Wednesday, we pray for you, pay 1,000 shillings. You can imagine somebody who's earning 1,000 shillings after 3 days, and they're in such a desperate situation, and they see that this could be my way out, right? And this could be the thing that would give me an opportunity. Then you go and give it to somebody who obviously has no
Are you saying
intention
that because
whatsoever
they're
of pulling
desperate,
you
they've also
out.
lost all their faculties? They are no longer thinking straight.
You are more vulnerable
I'm
and
telling you, when
susceptible
you're
to
desperate,
influence.
there's something that
Absolutely.
somebody will tell you, and you feel that is the only way out. There's a
hold on
level
to
of
everything.
desperation that anything that comes, you will
There's
hold on
also-
to it as the way out.
and it's called
yes,
faith.
logic does fly out the window
It's
when
called
when
faith.
it,
It's
when
not
it
and
is
logic
met in the
don't
eye
There's
of
no divine
desperation.
intervention. I'll tell you how it works. It's called the placebo effect. Anytime that you go to church and you come out and a so-called miracle has happened, it's just the feel-good factor and the optimism that you've come out with that actually leads to those good fortunes coming your way in terms of how you've
No, you
interacted
can
with
imagine
people.
if a preacher
placebo,
says to
yes,
you,
and
if a
there's
preacher
faith.
says to you in church,
These
and you can
children
imagine
who
they say
die
it all
in
the
Syria
time.
and so on, do they not have faith?
But like a preacher says to you in church or during a session, whatever, and says, today
see,
will
even
be
the
your last.
person
No,
with
listen,
faith
they say to
dies.
you,
It
they
doesn't
say
matter.
to you,
Everybody dies.
No,
So
but
you're
this
not
is what I'm
supposed-
saying.
people
A
go
preacher
through
says
very
to you in
unfortunate
church,
lives.
a preacher says
Yes,
to
they
you in
do.
church
Do they
not have
today-
faith?
Yes,
But hold on.
even the
They
people in
do.
the Bible
So God chooses
died.
whom He gives His miracles
No,
to.
no.
A preacher
When
says to you-
people of a particular country decide they're going to fight each other, why do you bring God into that discussion?
No,
God
no,
gives
no.
them the ability to make decisions. They make decisions.
No,
they,
what if
and
they're
they go into
attacked?
war.
Like Iraq was attacked by the West and children were affected. Where was God then? If it's a matter of faith and He can
you-
change the course of
You now
things.
want us to discuss divine intervention, and you want
Divine
us to talk
agency
about
and faith. No, it's
whether-
when we talk about faith, and I'm saying it's the placebo effect and
But
believing
this is
that
what
you
I'm
You call it
and
placebo
preachers,
effect.
and no, hold on, but
Somebody
preachers
else
are
will call it
actually
faith,
very
and let's leave it
aware.
like that.
No, let's be very clear that preachers are very aware of the effect that it has on individuals when they say certain things, and they know that you would go along in some kind of hope or in some kind of renewed confidence going away, and then you know that in order to feel that way again, you then need to come back. And if they ask you to give your offering or give your whatever, you will do it. So if a preacher says to you that today is the last day you're going to suffer, are you crazy? We know that for a fact
By
that
the
it's
way-
not.
So perhaps they should pay for that feel-good factor. You pay to go to an amusement park, you pay to go to a restaurant, you pay to go into a nightclub, whatever it is that tickles your fancy, you pay to get that feel-good factor. So what the government perhaps need to do is put a cap on how much you should tithe.
In
or
terms of
how much-
good you should
how,
pay.
how
And
much you
how
should
will,
pay.
how will that work with the freedoms that individuals are supposed to enjoy?
No, if there-
Freedom
if-
to religion. Remember,
Yes, but
you
if
do
there's
have
a
religious
cap,
freedom.
If there's a cap and the pastor is categorical, or the whoever it is, the religious leader is categorical that you have to give your 200 shillings and that's it. Please give no more.
If you're
because
going
people
to say
listen,
that, then why don't you just put it as a church tax so that everybody pays?
because some people who are not interested and who don't believe in
It
all this
doesn't matter.
malarkey don't want to pay.
It
no.
doesn't matter. There are countries who
But
have
they're going
church
to
tax,
church. No,
and people don't even.
No, the countries who do like Spain, it's if you're Catholic
No.
that you will pay. Yes,
Not just Spain because you're Catholic. Everybody pays. In Germany, there's a there's a
if
church
you
tax,
if you
and
are
they
if
don't
you,
ask you what religion you are.
No,
do they?
if you are Protestant or Catholic, you pay a church tax. Not everybody pays a church tax in Germany. I'll quote the law for that.
Quote.
Shortly, I'll quote for it.
Quote.
I will look for it and
This
I'll
one
quote
you have
for
to
it.
quote, Nyeri.
And I will do that. Not everybody pays a church tax, and you can't demand that because some people don't believe that. What if people are Muslim? What if people are Buddhist? What if people are agnostic, atheists? Why should they have to pay? That limits the freedom of thought, which is the utmost basic freedom that should
Is
not
church tax being paid by individuals or is it being paid by churches?
be. Churches don't pay taxes.
Churches don't pay taxes to
No,
the government.
in that particular country.
No, by individuals. If you're Catholic, you will pay towards. This is in Spain or perhaps Germany. If Catholic or Protestant, you will pay a
So you
particular
file your
tax.
taxes like at the end of the year, though you're filing
And there's an
your
extra
income
tax
tax.
that
You
you
also
pay.
pay. You also pay. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and we come back and continue this conversation. It's 7:30. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. CT Muga is saying it's about time that we started regulating churches and how churches operate. Also, actually coming from the people who preach in the churches. Do you agree? Do you not agree? We're going to open up the phone line 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. .1
Spice FM. Kisi. Traffic.
Right, looking to see if anything has changed. Right, we do have traffic on Mombasa Road today, moving as far back as Syokimau and heading down towards the SGR. Definitely is going to take a while to get out into the city centre. It is flowing smoothly though after GM. Let's see what happens in a short while if that would open up. The traffic in Utawala is crazy. There are 5 lanes that are being used right now, and obviously everybody is trying to get out alive. Wayaki Way, there's an accident at the Wayaki Way, there's an accident just near Kangemi, and this is causing a lot of traffic moving towards the city, and hopefully that will be moved shortly. The route, there is a heavy traffic along the eastern bypass approaching North Airport Road roundabout, and this is going to collide with what we see happening at the Utawala area. So yes, people are trying to get out, and it's not happening. Lunga Likoni roads, there's going to be an issue today. Remember, Enterprise Road is closed until the 24th, and that makes movement a little bit more painful as we go along. So let's see how that opens up for us later. 0719 012 600.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
So here we have it, CT. Germans who are officially registered as Catholics, Protestants or Jews pay a religious tax of 8% of the annual tax bill. So you have to be officially registered. So you opt in as opposed to you're not forced to.
No, you don't opt in. People register as Catholic, whatever it is, but they may not even be practicing. Remember, registration doesn't necessarily mean that you participate in that process.
No, it doesn't. But if you're officially
What
registered, then you
percentage,
pay
say for
this
instance,
tax.
of the Germans are Buddhists? What percentage are Muslim? What percentage
Is
are...
not registered as anything.
Okay, my point is, it's not the whole nation that pays the church tax. It is people who are officially registered, and you choose to be officially registered as Christian, Protestant, rather Catholic, Protestant, or Jew. And you pay 8% of your annual, well, it's 8 to 9% of your
You should
annual
practice
tax
it the other
bill.
way around. Instead of taxing people individually, tax the church that has collected all these offerings and whatever business it's running. Because these churches are also running business. Then tax them. Like you're saying, they've become a business.
If they register business, the question is, are those businesses taxed?
Are they considered missionary?
No,
Mission.
That in this country, I wouldn't know. But what I do know for a fact is this, is if there's one institution that lends itself to a lot of abuse, is the church.
Unfortunately.
And does a lot of abuse too. I mean, and vice versa, the inverse, yes.
Humanity, by its very existence, champion abuse. Humanity, by its very existence, are the ones who populate churches. So they will carry those habits that they have as human beings into even the most hallowed of institutions.
But some abuse is institutionalized. We see that with the Catholic Church and the sort of kiddie fiddling and
It isn't
pedophilia that we
institutionalized
see.
in Jerry.
It is.
There are individuals within those
but
churches.
the church protects
Jerry,
them. The church
there are
protects them.
individuals
And what
within
happens...
those churches who have exhibited those terrible qualities.
And what
and
tends-
there are a small percentage of the vast number of people who belong to those institutions
Even if it was
who
one
actually do
Okay,
what they
can we-
say
can we-
they're
can
going to
we-
do.
can we refocus
No.
the conversation
I
so I
want
can
to make
open
a
the phone
point here
lines?
about it being institutionalized. The fact that the Catholic Church protects these pedophiles
How does it protect
is
them
very
when the
telling.
Pope himself
Because
speaks
he's now
out
speaking against it.
When
But
you
for
have
the
bishops
longest,
who have actually
yes,
already been
for
moved,
the longest, what
how
happens?
can you call that protection
for
by
the
the
long,
church?
I'm telling you, you've asked me how they protect them. I'm telling you, what happens is somebody's moved from one diocese to another, as opposed to being exposed and given to the law. They seem to be exempt.
you have others who've
from
been
what
taken
we
to
call the
court.
law. Not enough. One getting away is one too many, and the church does protect them. It is known that pedophilia has been institutionalized in the Catholic Church,
It is
and
not
it is a
known.
big problem.
It is not known.
It is a view that you have. What is institutionalized is your view. That, yes.
Under which institution?
Yours.
Under yours. It's something you've made up.
Let's
and
pick a
you've
call from
determined.
Teddy. Teddy in Nairobi. Good morning, Teddy.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning.
Fine, thank you.
It is so long. There's one thing I want us to understand. We cannot regulate churches.
Why not?
Why?
I'll tell you, City. And let me tell you, we are the people that we should feel very happy because we are living in the prophetic days right now. What we just need to just to open the third eye. Yeah, I wish I had time. In the Bible, it is predicted during the end days, everything will be taxed. And I can prove that if I had time. Also, you cannot judge. So if you start saying maybe a certain pastor is doing this, that is we are judging.
Actually, you can't judge. Even the Bible allows you to judge. It just says, do not judge so that you may not be judged. But you can judge.
That's what I'm trying to say. What you cannot judge is all about if you can put the religious issues, matters away from maybe taxation, those things, it's okay. Because if you read the Bible from the time 303, the time of this what are called Declasia, the time these guys persecuted most of the Christians because of their faith. It was because of those taxations and so many other things. That's what I'm saying. If you enter inside the Bible very well, you'll understand exactly what is happening right now.
Teddy, you're against regulation of churches.
Yeah, I oppose that because we have so many conmen, and there's one thing I want us to understand. These things were there. History repeats itself. These things were there even before in the Israelites' times, even now.
True.
So if we judge these, it will be so wrong because right now, I wish I had an email send you all things so that you can understand
All right.
what I'm saying.
We'll engage deeper maybe one day, Teddy. Let me also bring
Yeah,
in Victor from Kericho. Victor, good morning.
Morning, Eric.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Morning, Jerry, Ndo, and my good friend, Siri.
How are you, sir?
Good morning.
Siri.
Yes. Morning, Siri.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yes.
So, Eric, I'm for the idea of regulating churches in Kenya.
Why?
For one, the regulations will come up with directions of, for instance, you've talked of Rwanda, whereby for you to set up a church, a pastor must have at least a diploma in theology and above.
Certainly
Here in Kenya,
a degree.
yeah, let's talk of such qualification. Here in Kenya, it's the only place whereby we know ex-convicts. They come back from prison. They set up some village church kiosks in the villages. They start preaching the good gospel. And the only qualification they have is that they were ex-convicts, which is very wrong. I can't relate an ex-convict to maybe theology or some theological concepts to lead masses. Secondly, the moral fabric of churches in Kenya has really gone down. For instance, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist faithful.
Yep.
That SDA that we used to know from late 90s, I can attest to late 90s, early 90s, no, I was young by then. It is totally different from whatever we are seeing now. It's money all over. The pastors, though qualified, most of them have degrees in theology, but it is nowadays money oriented.
Okay.
Yes.
I think you've made your points, Victor. Thank you very much for your call this morning.
Yes, Eric, but why do you need to cut me short before?
Let the man talk, Rico.
These are very pertinent topics.
Do you feel we're regulating you?
Yes, Eric has gone ahead to regulate me.
All right,
Eric, one more minute, please.
Yes, make your final point.
Yes, I think recently you saw whatever went down in Nairobi. This is Maxwell SDA. Yeah, it's all about controlling money. So I think the government should come up with proper regulations to regulate churches, the monies, so that we can as well. We can even the sadakas should be regulated. Where do they go to? Who are the beneficiaries? You see?
Okay.
So that we avoid all these values of yes.
Haya, sasa kiwango yako imefika. Thank you very much for calling in, Victor. Have a good day in Kericho.
Thank you, Latif.
Have a good one. 0719-012-600, that's the number to call in. 0719-012-600. Do you agree that we should regulate churches in Kenya? And how should we do this? Should we be regulating churches as institutions or churches as preachers?
It's actually easier.
Or is it even the congregants?
It's even easier if you look at the regulations that the churches have within themselves and simply ensure that they enforce them, because you can judge them by the rules that they set for themselves.
You speak of mainstream churches, though. What about the likes of Pastor Nganga? How is any self-regulation happening there? He's not part of any umbrella body of churches. There is no oversight
you
body.
May find
These
that
are
he
individuals.
belongs to an umbrella of churches. So many of them,
they all do.
They belong to.
All do.
They affiliate to a certain umbrella.
They all do. But
which one does he belong to?
But once again, you actually cut me short. I had actually begun what I was going to say, and I was going to say this, that in the absence of that self-regulation, then you can stipulate and lay down rules that says, okay, since you don't seem to be able to do this for yourself, then this is how we expect you to function.
Whenever any profession, now let's just speak of profession, is facing some sort of regulation, they always come together and they talk of self-regulation. This happened in the media. We have now the Media Council of Kenya, which was actually being pushed from the media side as regulation. I think churches have been fighting this whole issue of regulation, and instead of coming together to say this is what we shall do to ensure that we weed out the bad apples, because they all, of course, agree that they are bad apples, they just chill. But Doreen is calling from Nairobi. Good morning, Doreen.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, now I'd like to contribute to the morning conversation about regulation of churches. I am a congregant in one of the churches, and day in, day out, you feel that we need to be regulated. For example, we'll tithe, we'll give offering to the church, but when you need those things that mainly touch to humanity, for example, holding a wedding, like even getting blessings from the church, you have to pay. And you find that, yes.
Explain that. How do you pay to get blessings?
Get a blessing. This is interesting.
You do. You have to. Because you have to facilitate the pastor possibly to come to your place. You're getting.
All right. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The blessings that I may require, does the quantity of is the quantity of blessing determined by how much I give?
Maybe at times, even you can try to slot yourself in and no one is available for you. Yet you're a fully fledged member of the church.
But I think what CT is saying is if I pay 1,000 shillings and somebody comes and pays 100,000 shillings, actually the person paying 100,000, the blessing is more. Right?
Of course. The weight you're given in the church is not the same.
Okay.
So if I pay 100,000, I get 100,000 shillings worth of blessings.
You get a front row seat in church. You get a sofa set.
What do these blessings consist of? Are they tangible?
For example, you need your wedding officiated. That is a blessing. Yeah? That is a blessing. You are a member of the church. You want to wed. Pay. Yeah? But you have to pay. Yet, every day you're participating in this church. You're giving out money for the benefit of running of the church. But you find that you get nothing back as a congregant.
Do you get any spiritual nourishment?
Where you get the spiritual nourishment, but that's not all. We are human beings. You're getting. So you find that these people, much as you're giving them all this much, let them be taxed. Because there's nothing much they're doing to the society.
They're just buying big cars, big houses.
They're just buying big cars, big houses, and just keep telling us to, remove money and, we'll do it because we are human beings. We want to be blessed.
True.
But you can be blessed without removing this money or without going to church.
Trust me, the pressure is there. You have
pressure
a covenant
from who?
with God.
From the pastor.
God is everywhere. God is in your toilet. He's everywhere. You don't have to go to church and give money.
You can't stay there without giving money. You can't stay there without
We hear you, Doreen. Thank you very much. Asante sana. This is the Situation Room. We are picking your calls this morning, 0719-012-600. Should we regulate churches or should we not? Should we regulate them? Should we not? It's 14 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
The phone lines are open. John is calling from Kiambu. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
I think they should be regulated because they are businesses. Now, medieval as they were, the people who came up with the idea of the church in the first place sat down and they saw this thing as traction. I mean, it's gaining momentum with the people. Which is exactly what happens today. People listen to these people and they go and give money.
So regulate them.
They should be regulated. They
How?
How? People think because they are matters of the heart, as they put it,
soul,
they should be regulated. But these people also run businesses on the side. If I want capital, if I want to start, let's say, a school, the easiest way to find money is opening a street church just around the corner here.
And in a year, you'll have your money for the school.
Then I have my money for the school.
John, asante sana for your call. Thank you very much. Stephen Kibra. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Habari zenyu hapo, habari Muga?
Salama kaka, uko mzima?
Kabisa. Nilikuwa nataka kuchangia hii mada. You know, the Bible says that my people are suffering because they lack wisdom. Yet the same Bible says, do not muzzle the oxen while it is doing what? While it is working.
Yes.
But the problem is, you see, the congregants do not read their Bible. They wait for the pastor to read the Bible for them.
And then tell them.
That there is the truth in the Bible, you see? You are not supposed to pay to get blessings, because even God himself gave us Jesus for free. You see? He loved the world and gave us for free.
Yeah.
So we should be doing while working at the church, going to the church, we should do it just wholeheartedly, not by paying. And then these small churches, they don't have that structure. They don't have the elders of the church. These structures from the pastor, deacons, and whatever that may come or be.
Yeah.
You see, the pastor ndiye anaokota sadaka, ndiye anahubiri, ndiye anaenda kwa mashirika, ana command, unaona?
Doing everything.
So you see, there is no structure in the church. Unaona?
Asante Steve.
One man guitar.
Hata Yesu, just wait, hata Yesu alilipa tax mpaka akatoa kwa mdomo ya samaki. Alituma wanafunzi, siko hapo kwa Bible.
True, it's in the Bible.
Yeah.
He paid tax, but tunafaa kulipa hata government, because the government is under church, because God is under rule. God rules the world through the church.
Asante.
Not that the government should regulate. Not that the government should regulate the church.
Thank you very much. Asmani is in Mombasa. Good morning, Asmani.
Hello, good morning.
Good
How are you?
morning.
Okay, me, I am actually torn in between the two, because I think the government, it's okay if the government regulates the church, but it depends on the attitude, the intentions, and the quality of the government that you have. If the government has good intentions for the church, and they can do a proper regulation, and the money probably goes back to the church, that is okay. But if you have a very bogus government, seriously, they regulate the church, they take the tax, and then they eat the tax, that is not fair. But
You'd rather your pastor eats the tax,
Better
the
the
money.
devil, you know.
I'd rather the pastor eat the tax.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I'd rather that.
Okay.
Yeah. But also, I think also Christians have really misunderstood the issue of faith and tithing, and we should use our brains. I mean, when you see your pastor is doing something and you think he's misusing money, then why do you tithe? It's a matter of common sense.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so
Thank you, Asmani.
It's interesting that they bring that up, because in Uganda just a year ago there was the mandatory tithing, and you would actually have to declare what your salary was in certain churches. Declare what your salary was to the church elders, so that they would then know,
Determine how much.
and then they know how many of you are giving 10% of how much you're earning. So it became something that was then forcibly taken from you. And they said, look, how are we supposed to maintain the church? How are we supposed to pay for the upkeep of the pastors?
Right.
And
Let's
people
hear this
don't
from
want to, and people
Victor.
don't want to contribute.
Victor is in Nairobi. Good morning, Victor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I think churches should be regulated. Now, for example, there's a church I used to go to, and then every time they used to have fundraising to buy some land. That after 2 years later, the land was never bought, and we don't know where the money went to, and you cannot question. When you question, you are told you're questioning the man of God, and therefore you're bound to receive some curses. So you see, such things, because of such things, I believe we should have some bit of regulation.
So how should they be regulated?
I think we should be able to vet and identify the right people to lead the churches, and just to avoid this kind of fraud and fraudsters.
Right.
Yes.
Perhaps what the government can do is what they do in these countries we were speaking of. So, for instance, Germany or Spain, whereby if you are a registered Christian, whichever denomination, you pay a certain tax, and that goes into a kitty, and the government then divides that into the different churches, or there's then money that churches can apply for. Of course, then there would be more stringent regulations as churches apply, and you wouldn't have quacks and sort of individuals looking to prey on the vulnerable for the sake of wealth acquisition. But of course, it's also a very interesting industry, because they actually sell you something that could exist, might exist. There's no proof, there's no evidence of it, and this is why they're able to flourish, and this is why this industry is
there is
predisposed.
evidence. Unless you're going
when
to
you
say
get
that
blessings, what evidence
No.
is there? You don't walk away with a paper bag full of blessings, do you? So
You
you're
do.
quite happy to keep giving more money.
You actually walk away with
a paper bag
full of yes. You do.
Okay, so fafanua tafadhali.
Actually, you fafanuad it yourself. There's the aspect of what you call placebo, feel good.
Yeah.
But there are people who actually honestly do receive miracles, meaning they were unwell and they actually get healed for real. Whatever was
Placebo.
no.
Trust me.
I've mentioned, Jerry, you don't know everything that happens
I know
to everyone.
everything.
So you cannot categorically say that
God
it
has
doesn't happen.
done miracles
Yes.
and actually healed
Yes.
certain people.
What you want
so
to
why
say
does
is
not,
you don't know,
Why
but
does
you
he
cannot
not heal
categorically say-
everybody? Is he selective?
No. The understanding from that is if you take the view that the mind you have and the creative processes are from God, so the process of being medically healed is a process of healing, and that is God's contribution to it. The miraculous healing isn't, even in Jesus' time, not everybody got healed. There are just a few people who got healed. Others went to the equivalent of hospitals
He didn't
where
go
they
to the
found cure
graveyard and raise everybody.
from the dead. No.
I don't know. I'd rather go to the hospital than the church if something was wrong with me. Just, I'll put it out there. If I
You can go
collapse
to the
right here,
hospital and
take
pray
me to
at
a
the same
hospital.
time. And many people
do
do
not
that.
take me to
And
a
they
church.
pray that their caregivers would have the wisdom to know what they ought to
I'm
do.
just saying.
because I'd be on my way.
You know,
just saying.
there
But
is.
what I was explaining, CT, sorry, before you came in, is the fact
No,
that
no.
the reason, no, I was saying the lack of proof and the lack of evidence, because it's all based
No.
on faith.
What-
that is what allows these
What you're
church to
discussing
prey
is
on
your lack
and
of
exploit
understanding of
individuals.
something.
But that faith is proof. If I have prayed for something and then it happens, therein is my
Who
proof.
says it wouldn't have happened? This is the thing.
But
How do you know
but
it's
why are
because
you
you
praying
prayed
if
for
it
it?
has happened?
Why you
No,
yeah,
no, no.
exactly.
You
I
said you
prayed
prayed and
Because
then
it
I
hasn't
have
happened and then
faith.
it happened.
And then-
Because
yes,
it happens.
but
There is my proof that my
coincidence
praying
is
has
not
worked.
causation. Understand that. Just because it coincidentally happened, it doesn't mean it's the prayer that caused it. And this is why this is such a difficult
So what
industry
caused it?
to it could have been
The
your
stars
hard
aligned?
work. Absolutely, could have been your hard work.
My faith as well.
Well,
I
that's
choose to go with the
debatable.
You
faith.
see, if you start from the perspective that you do not actually believe in miracles, then no amount of discussion will convince you otherwise.
Would make you
But
then
it's the
believe
fact
in
that
with
the
you're
every
miracle.
paying-
statement that
you're
one
paying
makes,
for
you will
miracles,
find-
and we don't know if they exist or not.
Look,
and you're
we
paying for them,
know
you
that
don't know if
they
they will
exist.
happen or not.
Jerry, if you do not believe in miracles, then happily don't believe it is fine. I am merely saying that there are others who actually do believe and it works for them.
The problem here, though, is that look,
I
and
can't
I would
believe
say
we're having
yes,
this conversation.
miracles or not. The problem is that in the existence of such, there have certain people who have chosen to abuse this and prey on the innocence and desperation of very many people who hang on to that thread
Yep.
of the possibility that circumstances could change. That's the
But
problem.
my dear, it is not just in the Christian faith. People the world over have faith. That is why people invest in the stock market. That is why people buy Bitcoin. It's all
It's
based.
a gamble.
Yes, but
it's
you
a
don't
gamble.
Have,
it's a calculated risk.
But CT, you don't have individuals standing regularly telling you to keep bring it. You don't have individuals telling you,
And you don't have to bring it.
You don't have individuals telling you that. You don't have people praying on you in a different kind of way.
No.
So that I'm saying, you talked about the
It's
fact
true.
that
Those
Christianity.
that prey
you
on
talked about
people.
the
Look,
fact that
are
Christianity
you
has
saying-
become. No, you said that
I
Christianity
am
has
aware
become
what
a
I
business.
said,
It has become a
Ndu.
business, and
I'm
people have made
simply
it a
trying to
business by
explain.
manipulating people's circumstances
But
and feelings.
so are we saying the vast majority of institutions that call themselves churches prey on people?
Absolutely. Okay, you were
Absolutely.
saying a lot of absolutely.
Vast majority?
Look at I want to talk about this Pastor Gideon.
No,
Dare.
don't give one example. You said absolutely the majority. Give me an example of this majority of churches who prey on people. You said majority. There's one example. He's not a majority. He's one.
If you look at churches in Kenya, Let's look at churches in Kenya. Most churches, the core or the cornerstone of the service is you're being primed to remove as much money as
When
you
was the
can.
last time you went to a church in Nyeri?
I don't know, 8 years ago.
Precisely. I go to a church and the bulk of the service has nothing to do with what you're saying.
So then why would you say that Christianity has become a business city?
Because it has. You do not need to have every church on this particular planet doing business for the church, as it were, to. All you require is an institution or institutions that call themselves a church. That's all you require.
I was looking at a
and
figure,
if they provide the
1.2
example,
trillion worldwide.
Jerry, is it possible for someone to actually say what they want to say without you sort of like chiming in with yours or contradicting?
No, I was furnishing
Yes.
your argument with some facts about making money.
Go ahead, the city.
The beef that I actually have here is one that stipulates that the church has actually moved from what their co-mandate is supposed to be. This is what I was getting at. And when you hear of the sort of catastrophes we've had, if you look at the mandate of what the church is, they should be at the forefront of these things, but they are not. Instead, what we see coming to us is money-making ventures.
Exactly.
Hence, the call for regulation.
Right. And the money-making ventures, obviously they've seen that there's certain class of people that they can tell this thing to, and there's certain people that they can't, and they don't. The majority of people that they're able to manipulate are those who are within the realms of some kind of desperation, or who actually don't understand that, my friend, if you are making this prayer to heaven, I can do it myself.
Indeed. The conversation continues on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE, Facebook, and at Spice FM KE is our Twitter handle. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the next hour, we'll be joined by the former Vice Chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Lilian Mahiri Zaja. We'll be talking about boundary review that's about to begin in the next year, and also some amendments to the IEBC law and what the BBI has proposed, the disbandment of the current IEBC. What do you think of that? Do you agree? Do you not agree? Just tune in. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice up your
Okay,
life.
so what was earlier promising to be good vibes on
Traffic.
the road has actually changed now, and there's been a block of the Allsops flyover, so people have to use outer ring and have to go all the way around, so it's a bit of a nightmare right now. Thika Road is not promising to show us anything better now. Utawala to the 75 roundabout is a total mess. Both ways are actually crazy, and there's a lot of indiscipline that is taking place there, and there's a demonstration that's going on that road as well, so that could account for a lot of the traffic that we see. Avoid the Eastern Bypass if you can this morning. It's an absolute mess, and that is the state of those highways. Mombasa Road from Simba Cement towards Athi River is absolutely fine. As you get to the JKIA turn off there, you're going to have some problems. All right, coming off of Waiyaki Way into town now, a lot better than it was before. Thika Road now, the secondary exit at Safari Park, was designed to get people off the road, but unfortunately now it's chock-a-blocked all the way. Let's see what it looks like in about an hour or so. Things should actually get better, but for now, sit tight. Most roads are doing splendidly well, except for those that are not.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up not down.
A very good morning.
This
2 minutes
is
past
the
8 o'clock.
Situation
This
Room,
is the Situation
the
Room. It's Kenya's
only way to
biggest
start your
conversation.
day.
We're live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, www.spicefm.co.ke is our website. And also you can tag us on Twitter at Spice FM KE. Wherever you are around the country, you will find us. In Mombasa, we are on 87.9. In Nakuru, we are on 96.0. Kisumu, 102.5. Eldoret, 96.7, 90.9. In Nyeri, 97.7. In Malindi. We are joined in this hour on the hot seat by Lilian Mahirizaja. She is a former vice chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Thank you very much for coming. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here.
Yes, and of course, now when you talk about IEBC, we know, for instance, that you exited office before the end of your rightful tenure. And then we've seen now, the BBI report is out. It's talking about, let's rejig this IEBC, the current IEBC. It doesn't have 4 commissioners who have already, stepped aside. They've said they've quit or whatever they have decided to do. There's still questions out there whether they've actually resigned or not, but they're not in office. And then we have seen that the IEBC is preparing to do the boundaries review next year. So a lot to talk about in IEBC. So let's start with, should the current IEBC actually be disbanded before we start talking about a referendum, a boundaries review, anything?
I think we have politicized a lot the electoral management body in Kenya. Looks like every time we going into elections, we have to have a new body in place. It's unfortunate that now we have 3 commissioners in office, and our constitution is clear. The commission, for it to be properly constituted, has to have between 3 and 9 commissioners.
Yeah.
This is a commission, when it was constituted, had 7 members, as opposed to the commission which I served, which had 9. The ISAC-led commission, we were 9 commissioners. So very well within the constitutional requirements.
Yeah.
You ask whether it is duly constituted now, before we go into the next election. It's a question of the politics of the day. And I think a decision had been made sometime last year that, a new commission needs to be in place, owing to the fact that the other commissioners had exited. But I think because we are always in this political mood in the country, it is the political expediency that carries the day, which is quite unfortunate. We can give examples of big democracies such as India, which has over almost 1 billion voters. They only have a chairperson, 2 other commissioners, and the commission is run by public servants. So we can see right now Kenya, which has much, much fewer voters, of course, quite a paltry compared to the Indian one. We've been having 7 commissioners, 9 commissioners, and all operating under the kind of political environment we
that
have.
they do.
And so far, the commissioners are in office. They have been carrying out their mandate as per the constitution. So it's a question of what needs to be done politically.
Political expediency.
Yes.
And you've said it's unfortunate. Of course, you've already told us that this is, you've seen it. We have seen the Kivuitu Commission came and went. The Isaac Hassan IEC came and went. The IEBC came and went. Now we are saying Chebukati must go. It's always, we are constantly in this cycle of, getting people in, getting them out of the commission. How can we protect the electoral management body from this kind of incessant politics all the time? Is it possible? Is it wise even?
When Kriegler came in and gave recommendations for an independent body, these are the kind of things, which had come out during the commission's work. They came in to see and to investigate what is wrong with the electoral system, what is wrong with our processes. And one of the recommendations was that we have an independent commission. Looking at our history, which you have recounted, we can talk about the Kivuitu Commission, what happened, and they were disbanded. And then we come right up to the Isaac Hassan, then the Chebukati Commission. We want to disband that. How can that commission serve if it is not insulated against the politicians, the political class, and the political processes? After all, it is a political process.
Right, and is it possible to have a body like this independent of any kind of political interference? Is it possible with what we've seen over time? Because you'll always have people who are aggravated for one reason or another, or somebody who wants to make sure that they are confident that the body's carrying out due process. Is it possible, really, even with all the recommendations, to have an independent electoral body in this country with the way we do politics?
The way we do politics in Kenya, it's now becoming evident it might be impossible, but it is possible. This is why when we passed our new constitution, the Constitution of 2010, we established the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. You see, the commission is independent, yes. Operationally, it is independent. Financially, operationally, we are independent, yes. We say it is an independent body. Financially, we have to be accountable. Even operationally, really, we have to be accountable to the people of Kenya. Your finances come from the exchequer, and therefore they have to be passed through Parliament for approval, and that is where now the independence is checked.
But is it really independent?
It is independent because operationally you manage your processes. But when it comes to financial independence, this is where now your independence is checked against other parameters of your operational independence. And that is where the problem is, because it becomes politicized.
Madam Commissioner, if I am to believe what you're saying, and I would like to, are we then to suggest that all the accusations that have been leveled against, say, the IEBC have been without foundation?
You may want to give examples, because as far as I'm concerned, the law is very clear. The IBC Act is very clear that every official of the EMB, a commissioner, staff, they take personal responsibility for their actions. So if there is any accusation against the IBC, you must level it against the responsibility. Somebody has to be accountable for their actions.
The example that I'm going to give is what came out when the Supreme Court nullified the presidential election that we had. It was processes. That's what it boiled down to. And it's these processes that are managed by the IEBC.
Yes, and that is where now I come to say an individual must be held accountable. Somebody has to be held accountable for those irregularities that happened. The processes must be checked and audited against what the law provides. If the law provides for this, what didn't you do? Or what did you fail? What did you fail to do? Or what did you omit? Your omissions and commissions, you must stand accountable for them. And that is where now I believe if somebody is alleged to have committed an offense or omitted to do something, then you are audited against that. You are accountable to the people.
This body that we have, the IEBC,
yes,
from my observation, it was clear to me as an individual, that they had done whatever was within their means to actually carry out a credible election. I could see it. But what I could also see is that many of the commissioners seemed to be ill at ease. Your body language indicated that there were many things you were uncomfortable. What I'm getting at is this. Did you really genuinely feel that you were independent in carrying out your functions? That's what I'm asking.
When I was serving, I felt I had the independence. Yeah, operationally, we were making decisions. And remember, this was different from what we've seen in the Chebukati Commission. We carried out whatever decisions we made were made via consensus. There was agreement across board that this is what we are doing. We are all in agreement. We never really had a time when we really had divisions. We only voted once, and that was with regard to having the diaspora participating in the elections.
In the
That was-
2013 election.
Yes, and that was the only time we voted. The other times it was by consensus. So I want to believe that we operationally had the independence we needed to carry out our mandate.
The Isaac Hassan Commission, of course, came under a lot of pressure as well. So, yes, the IIEC it did the referendum and then became IEBC, went into the 2013 general election. And out of that, of course, there was no nullification of the 2013 election, but there was still the political nullification of the 2013 election because the parties that had gone to the Supreme Court came out and said, we don't agree, but we accept. And that's when the pressure started coming out. Isaac Hassan must go. And of course, it meant that all of you had to be swept aside. What are those intrigues? What is it that actually made you guys be, let's say, dismissed, so to speak?
You're right that after the 2013 general elections and after the Supreme Court ruling, because it came out clearly that, again, there were people who were responsible for some of the irregularities that happened. And we came back, and I think we were one of the institutions at that time under the spotlight from every other constitutional commission. The Commission on Administrative Justice, the ESCC pounced on us, Parliament pounced on us, and we went to Parliament and presented our case and presented the evidence that we did indeed conduct the elections in accordance with the Constitution and the laid down laws. But I think we have set a trend, as we said in the beginning. Every time we have a general election, the election is so divisive to the point that the country is split right in the middle. So one side is aggrieved, another side is celebrating. So the aggrieved party cannot rest until they remove the referee. And that is exactly what happened to the Isaac Hassan team. That the aggrieved party, much as they had the right to go to court, they went to court, and the ruling was made. And of course, the Supreme Court was alive to all the procedural things that didn't go right and made recommendations on what was to happen. But the aggrieved party was not satisfied. We still appeared before the ESCC. We went and appeared before Parliament. That was not enough. So Parliament looked for a political solution. And the political solution was to get the commissioners out of the way and have a new commission.
So was who then, I mean, from your point of view, where did the problem lie? Because at some point, obviously, the aggrieved party comes and complains and there's a problem and it's been removed, commissioners go home. But then there's another side who were perfectly okay with the way things went. Otherwise, they would have complained, right? So then where was the problem? Was the problem, according to you, with IEBC? Did you accept?
Was it a perception problem?
Did you accept fault as the IEBC?
We accepted fault in as far as the processes were concerned. But remember, there is always so much focus on the presidential petition, presidential election results, and we forget all the others. Why do we put such premium on the presidential election? Yet, when we managed the election of 2013, all the by-elections after the petitions were finalized and we conducted by-elections returned the same person who had been voted for on the 4th of March, except for one particular by-election. I think it was too close to call, and one new person came in Kisumu, if I remember. But all the other
by-elections returned
the same.
So there was no problem with process.
Nobody talked about process, and of course, when the petitions were discussed, deliberated in court, everything was clear. But for the presidential petition, it's always that we are divided right in the middle.
So, but you said that
the opposition will always make noise.
Right.
The aggrieved party will always make noise.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the winning party will be happy.
But you said there was a problem procedurally at the IEBC.
Processes. I'm talking about processes. And this is where somebody petitions that in this case, my votes were not counted, so there is a repeat of, a
Understood.
vote recount,
Right.
or
And-
something happened at the polling station. Those are things that are processes.
Yes, understood.
On the management.
Right.
Yes.
So now, would you see that this replicated itself at the presidential and as well as all other stages? Because was there a problem with process at the presidential level or on all other levels? Where would you see that the problem really was? Because like you said, people take issue with the presidential results much more than they do with all other, because by-elections happened and everybody seemed to be okay. What was the problem with process at the presidential level? Because I think it's extremely important. In another 2 years, we're going there, whether IEBC, whether mandate will be given or not. But if there's a problem with process at the presidential level where everybody's attention is, then that's something that needs to be dealt with. If we know what the problem is, really.
Yeah, it was obvious that at the presidential level, there was a lot to do with technology. And in particular, the transmission of
the results.
Results are transmitted all the way from the polling stations through to the levels and from the polling stations to the tallying centers, the tallying centers at the constituencies, then to the counties, then to the national tallying center. So people had issues. I know during the petition there were issues about the results transmission and the tallying of the forms, which brought issues, and all those were interrogated. And after interrogations and all the issues put together, recommendations were made again on how the tallying should be, on how the processing of the results should be.
Right.
And I think a lot has been done to improve transmission of results, because remember, in the 2013 general elections, the IBC took on and embraced technology in a big way for all the major processes within the electoral process. So I think all those recommendations that were made, a lot has been done to improve, in particular, technology. But remember, people are not easily, how would I put it? They would not believe those results coming down. Convince, really. Convince or accept.
Actually,
they easily do not accept.
They can't accept and move on.
I would put it this
not
way.
Accept that the results, the technology works. Yes. It's
This
not
could
easy
be
for
because
them.
of the fact that previously didn't. You see?
There was no technology before.
There was no
2013.
technology.
But
There was no
even
technology.
technology.
Even with the technology.
The thing you must understand, it'll have teething problems. These phones that we claim to be used to hang, sometimes they do something crazy and it deletes everything that you have. You can't foresee it.
Well,
Of course
at
you
least,
can't foresee,
the,
but
at
when a
least
presidential election hangs
results
in the
were never
balance,
deleted.
of course.
But there are also issues to do with even the transmission through the servers, through the Safaricom systems, because IBC cannot do it alone.
Of
You
course,
have to
but
partner with
partners
others.
with
when a presidential election, for example, and the results therefore are hinged on this, you can imagine that people will say there's foul play involved, whether it's used for the first time or the 10th time.
And
If there's
sometimes
a problem,
sometimes it's imaginary, because
but still perceived.
when they look at results from their strongholds, they accept
They're
them.
okay with those.
Yeah.
And
So why would they accept them and not accept when it is coming from probably the other side? See,
That's
these
a-
are
that-
the inconsistencies that are there when you're dealing with technology.
Let's allow
Yeah.
our guest to have a sip of water. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. On the hot seat this morning is Lilian Mahiri-Zaja. She is a former vice chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. She was in the Isaac Hassan Electoral Commission. This is 21 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I think one.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the things that, of course, increases suspicion, even if for the loser, is the fact that perhaps they could be more transparent, the elections themselves. And to this end, perhaps the idea of actually recording the results on video, so at the constituency level or even ward level for the presidential candidate, actually recording that, what they say, and then sending that video as opposed to transmitting, because it's this transmission that is not transparent. It's something people can't see. Have you considered that? Did you guys consider that previously?
I think, first of all, let's start from the point where Kenyans have little trust or not trust when it comes to the electoral process. And we did a lot as IBC when we served, and we did a lot of training even for agents at the polling stations, because we say elections are held really at polling stations. So if any agent has an issue, has a query on the processes, on the results, that has to be made at the polling station. You lose an election at the polling station. So by the time things happen and escalate to the national level, you should come with evidence right from the polling station, from the tallying of the results, to the transmission, to the constituency, to the county, and then to the national level. It should be an escalation, and it should be a thread that one can see. So when we adopted technology at the polling stations, from the polling stations, we believed Kenyans were now able to see that the process is transparent. And that is one of the most important things for people to believe that this process is transparent. So you have to see it right from the time you vote.
Would it be more transparent? This is what I'm asking, with this idea of a video. And as opposed to results being...
So you send the form and send a video clip as well of the returning officer declaring the winner.
The winner at
or
the
declaring
ward
the
level.
votes.
But announcements are done at the polling stations.
Now record it.
Unless now you want to make a good proposals, maybe to the BBI, that we want now the presiding officer to make announcements, and it should be video. It should be done by video. That is a proposal that can be taken forward.
And then you can correlate those videos and actually decide what the result is.
Because results have been...
It's that transmission that people worry about.
Results
what is
have
happening
been
in that
printed.
transmission?
We have printed results from polling stations, transmitted the same, and people have not.
And even the physical copies still come.
The physical copies come from the polling stations. They go all the way to the constituency.
Are you saying
all
there's
the way
no
to the county.
electoral fraud whatsoever?
I'm not saying 100%. I cannot vouch for that. But I'm saying it is as transparent as that. That those are the measures put in place from polling station to the constituency, where they are tallied again. They are retallied together with the others that come from all over the constituency. Then from the constituency to the county, again where they are retallied, just to confirm. All these are confirmations. And until they get to the national level, remember now what we proposed even is that announcements are made at each level. At the polling station, announcement is made. At the constituency,
at county.
At the county, so that at the constituency, the MP is announced. At the county level, you have your governor and all the others are announced. Then at the national level, then we are concerned about our presidential candidate.
Now, of
and
course,
that thread should go up to that level so that people can see it is a clear, open process.
And of course, it's not just the polling and the counting and the actual elections that you're responsible for as the commission. You're also responsible for registration.
Definitely.
How rigorous are you in ensuring that there's no malpractice in registration? Because that's yet another point at which people, or where there has been claims of irregular or fraudulent activity.
You see, now the IEBC must follow the law. The principles are well laid out in the Constitution on the equality of the vote. Each person's vote counts, and this is where now everybody, even the Elections Act, lays out the process by which somebody is registered, and where even people can go. A member of the public can go and say so and so should not be registered, can actually contest registration of a person. So the processes are well laid out. Once you have attained the age of 18, you're eligible to be registered as a voter. You present your ID or your document, if it's a passport, for registration before the registration officer. And you go through the process, and then you are given out, of course now Parliament, ruled out that it's not necessary you must have a voter's card, but you are registered. And you're on the registers.
The Kriegler
voters
Commission,
registers rule.
Kriegler Commission had recommended that once you register for your ID, you should automatically be registered as a voter. That's one of the recommendations that still hasn't come to light.
Because
so
our system is different. We are not well connected with the other registration systems in the country. In other developed countries, they do that. We have not reached there. So our register is separate.
Is it not possible for IEBC, instead of coming to me and ask me to come and register, just go to the registrar of persons and pick from that database?
List. It's there.
I have my ID. So what I need when I'm coming to vote is just come and
you
give
write
it.
a program.
Yeah, now you see, we do not have registers. We do not have registers that speak to each other. And now you can see the government has made concerted efforts.
The Huduma number.
For us to have a Huduma number. And have these various disparate registration systems interlinked. So probably when we get to that point, IBC would be in a position to ensure that it is interlinked with those other registration processes. We had the IPRS system that was meant to bring together all the agencies that do registration, IBC being one of them, the NSSF, the NHIF, the KRA, the Office of the Registrar of Persons, Immigration. All these need to be interlinked. Otherwise, for now, IBC must do its own separate voters' roll, which again they have to run against that one of the registration of persons, so that they ensure that even the dead voters are out and confirm that this person truly is Kenyan and has an ID.
Is it that we cannot create that synergy, or is it that we do not want to create that synergy?
I want to believe.
I apologize. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just asking, yes.
No, by good luck, I was a pioneer member of the task force that looked into how IPRS could happen in Kenya. And at that time, it was early in the days, early 2000, and we realized that every government agency that was carrying out some form of registration, the NHIF, the KRA, NSSF, IBC, and then that time it was ECK, the Office of the Registrar General, the Office of the Registrar of Persons, Immigration, they were all at different levels of embracing technology. And even up to now, I'm sure they are still not synchronized in terms of the level where they are in terms of technology. So I'm sure one day when we get there, and every registration agency has, made great strides in embracing technology, we might have that linkage that we are looking for in having one Huduma number and making access to services easy for wananchi.
Much easier as needed. We have on the hot seat Ms. Lilian Mahiri-Zaja. She is a former vice chairperson of the IEBC. She is not in the current one. She's a former one. She was in the Isaac Hassan-led IEBC commission. Of course, we are tapping from her knowledge as an expert in electoral matters. She worked as a commissioner. She's a lawyer. She's worked in various other spheres, like she's telling us she was in the task force for IPRC and all this. And that's what we're discussing this morning. We'll open up the phone lines shortly, 0719-012-600. It's 31 minutes past 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
traffic.
Some folks have been sat on Mombasa Road for an hour trying to get down the road to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. That's not happening. I think police have decided they'd open up some parts and not other parts. The bypasses seem to be feeding a lot of drama this morning, from the southern bypass to the eastern bypass. Things are not moving at all. Let's see how we can get that opened up with some information in a short while. But for now, it's not going to happen. We have some serious vibes coming out of industrial area. Remember that Enterprise Road is closed for the next few days, and that means that there will be a spillover of traffic to other areas, and also a standstill coming out from the Likoni and then on towards the Bunyala Road roundabout. So that affects that, of course. Coming off of Thika Road, before we did have some issues. And it's getting a little better. For us to understand what's happening in the Utawala area, there have been some protests, there are police all over, chaos as there's some fire on the road, and so that definitely affects traffic. Fire being that protesters have lit tires on the road this morning, so this is affecting the traffic. Airport North Road at a gridlock, and that is not happening either, and it's affecting traffic onto Mombasa Road. So we have some drama on this part of the city. Other parts of the city, from Langata Road to Westlands, coming off of Wayaki Way, not feeding us too much drama right now. We'll take a look at about half an hour to see what's going on. Find an alternate route, do let us know. 0719 012 600.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Ice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Now, Lillian, the IEBC is supposed to review the boundaries for constituencies, at least before the next general election. And IEBC has already announced that this exercise is going to be conducted next year. It has already written to the Bureau of Statistics asking for data, official data of people and where they reside, right? Now, of course, we've seen the politicians coming in, and this is where the issues come in. There's a required quota for every constituency to have as a number of people versus a number of space. The politics come in here. What kind of politics do you actually see playing before we get into the nitty-gritty of it? From the broad side, what do you actually see playing out? If you are in IEBC, how would you have approached this?
Wow. You know, boundary delimitation is such an explosive exercise. And this is where politicians come to claim they're tough. So you'd expect to see all kinds of politics right from the local level, from the ward level, from the lowest level. And now, you know, when you look at the national landscape, you're looking at a country that is split right down to the clans. Very shocking for us when we did the boundary delimitation in 2012, when we were finishing, to realize that people are divided right down to their clans when politics now matters. And those are the kind of politics we expect to see, because politicians will be trying to carve in their minds the boundary for their constituencies, the boundaries for their counties. If they are eyeing the governor's seat, they'll be looking at the county. If you're eyeing the MP seat, you're looking at the constituency. So those are the kind of politics you will see. People grouping together and forgetting that some of these things, okay, we will play politics, of course, as Kenyans, as usual. But all these things have been spelled out in the Constitution. The parameters are well laid out in Article 89 on how the process should be done. So if people were a little careful and just see that they need to look at their population, they need to see the developments in their area, the community of interest, geographical boundaries, then they might be able to have well-informed political input into the process, because we cannot divorce this process from the politics of the day. it is a political process.
It's a political process.
Yes.
That time when the Delgali Commission was doing the boundary delimitation, of course, there are some constituencies that had not met the threshold, but they were created. Now there is talk of other people who are saying our constituency is overpopulated, it should be split. And yet the Constitution tells us we cannot go beyond or below 290. We have a set number of constituencies, 290. What should happen? Would it be fair for a former constituency if it still remained small, if it had gotten that, if it had been created as a constituency and still hasn't met the threshold, would it be fair to merge it with a bigger one? And then split a larger one?
Yeah, you've said something that the constituencies are already numbered. In Article 89, we have 290 constituencies. And this is something that we'll see playing out. And not just constituencies, even counties. People are clamoring for more counties. And of course, there were around 21 constituencies that fell below the threshold. And on affirmative action principle, they were allowed to stand. Those of Lamu and I think Samburu and those that fell within that 21. They were allowed to stand on affirmative action. But now as we go into the process again, you're right that there are those that will say we are now big, we want to be split. And splitting constituencies is not just a matter of people having the population and now they want to split. They want to get resources. It's about resources. It's about proper management and access to public resources. So this is the question now. We are so many. We want to be divided so that those ones on that side can have, their own resources mapped out at their own level, and we also have our own. So those conversations have been going on, and same for the counties. We want our own county. We don't want to be within this county. Examples in Busia, the Tesos, in Migori County, the Kuria people, and one or two others, the Taita and the Tavetas. Yes. So you'll see those debates going on.
But we actually have had situations where constituencies have disappeared. I know for a fact that within what we now call Nyando, there used to be a constituency called Winam. It actually disappeared.
Called?
Winam. It disappeared. Meaning one election there was an MP for that area. By the time we got, it coincided with this period when boundaries were being set. It disappeared. So it isn't new.
It became lost out.
Yes. And also remember, when we started creating new districts, the very thing that you're saying happened. A district is created, it doesn't have the resources. So for instance, what was a sub-district hospital is now being called a district hospital, but it doesn't have the facilities that a district hospital should have. A dispensary, you now want to call it a health center. It cannot be a health center, because for it to be a health center, it has to have certain facilities. So it is all good and well to clamor, but if the rules by which these entities should exist is actually followed, even if there is noise, and there will be noise, it won't actually matter. Because I don't see a situation where, if, for instance, a constituency disappears for the reasons that are set down, that people won't make noise. Remember, one of the noises that is often made is that constituencies are created to favor certain people. For instance, if my clan is populous in a certain area and the current constitution pits half of them in another constituency, all you do is you carve it out so that my entire clan
we are
now
all together.
Yes. So it then gives me the ability to be able to be, I have a high chance of being elected.
As well, yeah.
Yes.
I don't know whether the word disappeared would be apt in this case, because what I know is that after boundary delimitation process and after listening to various views, the commission only followed what the people wanted. And there were a few places where people asked for renaming of their constituencies. So I'm surprised that you're using the word
no, it disappeared.
Could it have been absorbed?
No.
Is that a better
It
word?
may have been absorbed elsewhere and renamed.
I actually use the word disappear deliberately because if it existed,
it is a misleading one, because constituencies were renamed when boundaries were reset.
No, the constituency as it was then known ceased to exist.
So what happened?
Did another one come into place?
Was it
there
merged
another
with another
name?
one, or was it renamed?
It must have been renamed.
No, it wasn't renamed. They were merged. Yes.
Yeah, so you see, once
And
they are
then-
merged and boundaries are reset,
they
that
were
means
merged.
you get a new name that will favor everybody on the
Yes,
ground.
So the former one has disappeared.
Yes.
Lillian.
So where you
Not
so
really
where you were
disappeared.
once
It was
from,
absorbed.
you're no longer from there anymore.
You have a new name,
have a new
and that
name.
must have been
And
by
you have
consensus.
New fellow
Okay,
constituents.
Perhaps I'm giving you an example of where I come from. Let me give you a different example. For instance, Nyando, as it was known, covered what you called the Moroni area. Now Moroni is a constituency on its own. Nyando is a constituency on its own. So again, it was rejigged yet again. So you then had two entities where previously there had been one.
So one reappeared now.
Yes,
supposed
no.
to disappear.
So perhaps the term disappeared.
One was born.
So there is renaming of constituencies when we do the boundaries.
There is, but the point I was making was that with the renaming and the reshaping of it, certain demographic advantages also disappear. This one, I'm not using the word disappear because if, say, for instance, and others appear, I come from Moroni. With this configuration, if I were to vie for a seat, I would be advantaged in that the people who originally came from where I came from are the dominant group in Moroni. So I have an advantage. But when it was one whole body called Nyando, that advantage did not exist.
You are minority.
Yes. Not a very small, my clan was a very small minority. Yes. So all I'm saying is, when I use the word disappear, it's because it's not just the name that changes so it ceases to exist, but certain demographics also change.
Yeah, and even new dynamics come into play because the people who would ordinarily say you wanted to vie as an MP, the people where you'll get majority of votes from are those who know you within Muhoroni and not from Nyando.
Yes.
Yeah, because now Nyando is separate.
Yes, and
so
you'll
it
find
will be to your advantage.
Yes, or in my case, you'd find there are people from my clan who are also in Nyando. So, and maybe a previous configuration favored me more because they're all in one little basket. But now they've been divided. So all I'm saying is, I use the word disappear deliberately because, in essence, if someone had political ambitions, that's what happens. Your advantage disappears. Yeah, it's gone.
Vanishes, just like that. I'm concerned about what you said, Lillian, that the commission at the point was listening and took to account everything that the people asked for. If we continue with that, are we not going to actually bring in a lot of more chaos? Because
everybody's opinion in this case
everybody's
matters.
opinion matters.
What
the people of Kuria want their own constituency and their own county.
They do have their own constituency.
They want their own county now.
What I actually...
Taita and Taveta want to be different. And then, of course, those 21 constituencies that were small, they still want to remain.
What I actually meant is that this process was consultative. Remember, Ligale had done a lot of work. And the documents, the records we received from the IIBRC formed part of what the Isaac Hassan team used in terms of carrying out the final boundaries review process in 2012. And that process was consultative for the first time, after Kriegler recommendations that it be a consultative process. People should be asked on the ground, what do you want to see in your boundaries? That's what we did. And the reports actually, whatever decisions we made as IEBC were contested in court. And High Court made final determinations by July of 2012. So you see, it is that public participation that brings in all these, concerns of the people. It's about the concerns of the people. But you see, you cannot accommodate each and every. And this is why those who are not satisfied with what IEBC finally came out with, and you cannot carve out every border, every boundary through the rivers, the hills, the shopping centers to appease everybody. So those who went to court, and by July 2012 we had, our boundaries set out. But up to now, this is another area. If we open up, and we are opening it up because boundary delimitation has to happen every 8 to 12 years.
12 years.
And after a census. So now we've had the census. And this is why IEBC has already gone out and reached out to the Bureau of Statistics to find out exactly how many people do we have. the household survey that they always undertake, so that they can know how many people have increased in this specific ward or this specific constituency, and are they due for a review? We cannot touch the constituency, we cannot touch the wards, but people need to know that once it is opened up, it becomes a Pandora's box.
It does.
With all these politics around and everybody wanting a piece of the pie.
Tell me,
because of the fight for resources.
Tell me, Lillian, other than the geographical areas, so the landmass and the population, what other considerations in terms of parameters do you take into account when deciding these boundaries? You talked of Lamu and them falling below the threshold, but for purposes of affirmative action or because they were marginalized communities, you allowed it. So what other parameters do you take into consideration?
Yeah, the parameters are set in the Constitution. These are constitutional criteria in Article 89 that the Commission has to look at the population, the geographical area, has to look at community of interest,
right,
and has to look at the means of communication, how this area has developed, and those are very key in determining those boundaries.
Any
So
political
it is not
influence on those considerations, on those parameters?
We said it is a political process. So the political influence comes in form of people's views. This is what we want. So the politicians will agitate for what they would like to see through the views that people give. But of course the Commission has to be very careful and take into account only what is provided for in the Constitution, giving latitude here and there to the people's concerns. Because there are sometimes you have to listen to what people on the ground have to say. Like if they are not sharing a market is very far from them, the administrative headquarters are far from them. We had all those concerns being put to us that we take so long to travel from here to go and seek government services from this particular area. Why can't we have our own, within this locality? So all these now will come out more clearly because people are growing, the population is growing. The fight for resources which are scarce will always be there. And of course, the politics around it, you cannot rule it out. Okay. But it's not a main consideration for the IEBC politics.
Do you think we should get to a point where, now this is just seeking your personal opinion, we should get to a point where we open up maybe the Constitution and stop limiting the number of constituencies and allow the IEBC to actually look at population, look at all those other factors and say, because of this, we see a need to, let's say, split a constituency and create a new constituency. So we don't limit the IEBC in its work. Now you're telling it, your hands are tied, but do a delimitation of boundaries.
Kriegler made very good recommendations that the work of boundary delimitation should be separated from the work of managing and conducting elections. That we haven't done. And remember, we still have Article 1.
So we should be having a separate body to do this work.
We should have a separate body, and Article 188 of the Constitution mandates Parliament to come up with a commission, an independent commission that can look into boundaries of counties. Probably if we had that independent commission, as per Kriegler's recommendations, that would be dedicated into looking at the boundaries review, so that any time that we need to review these boundaries, because we will have to open up some time and look at the boundaries of constituencies. We can't just stay at 290. And of course, we'll also have to look at the boundaries of counties at one point if we are not changing, our system of governance. So if we have a dedicated commission, then that commission will look into boundary delimitation so that they see how people can better be served by government at their local level. Otherwise, this fight for resources, this fight for our own offices, our own counties, our own, constituencies, our own ward will continue.
Would it be prudent to merge to reduce the numbers that we have, or from what you're saying, many small ones make them autonomous in that regard, or to say bring them together and let's have less, and then it will be easier to manage? But from what you see, we have 290. Who says it has to stay that way for forever with some of the challenges that we see in this country? Then would it be prudent to reduce the numbers that we have, or increase?
It might be prudent to have a national conversation on this, whether to merge or, reduce them or maintain them. Because remember when we had the Bomas draft, and those are a couple of years ago,
right?
We had recommendations or proposals for 18 regions. But when we went to the next level, now we opened it up and said no. And this is because I'm sure everybody was saying this, I can't be in this region.
Yes. Yep.
Remember initially, we even had how many provinces? 8 provinces.
Eight.
Yeah, so when the Bomas draft came out, there were proposals for 18. So we might want to have a national conversation around this issue so that those who feel they have been disadvantaged before and might feel still disadvantaged now. Remember, we are saying those who want their own counties now because they already feel marginalized. They thought they were going to be included in this new system of governance, but now they feel isolated. So how can we ensure that all these principles we have in the Constitution, inclusivity, those who have been disadvantaged before, are brought in to feel part and parcel of this big government that we have at national level and at the local level, at the county level. So it is a national conversation we should have, I believe, because if we propose that we reduce them, on what basis?
Right.
We have to come up with parameters that will make sense to everybody.
And agreeable. That's where the problem will be.
And that's where the starting point will be, I want my own county.
Of course.
Everybody will want their own county.
But you can't get everybody on board. It's never happened.
Not everybody would be wholly satisfied.
Yes.
At least the majority.
Yes, that is why you have thresholds. You say, so long as we get this percentage, then we can feel it's representative. I feel the discussion that is actually in my mind is one of how do you get Kenyans to be a more believing people? Before you came in, we were talking about religion, and the discussion was that they are over-trusting when it comes to religion. But they seem to compensate it with politics.
Mistrust.
Complete mistrust. Yes, in everything political. It's like even the best proposal, instead of understanding it, the attempt seems to be to shoot it down. Yes,
you say
or dismantle it completely. Yes.
It's because our politics are tribal-based. Now, if you go to our tribes again, we are broken down right to the clan.
Yes.
So how can you satisfy people on that basis? What parameters will you come up with to ensure that this tribe, this clan, accepts?
The reward for political office, I think, has been seen to be something that to aspire for, the clan becomes the means of getting it. My tribe becomes the means of getting it. So my politics will guarantee that I position myself in the best possible selfish, self-centered way that would benefit me. And tribe seems to be and tribe is a good vehicle.
Definitely.
That's where to get you there, right?
That's where the politician starts. You start from your own backyard.
How can we change
before
this?
You move out?
Because it's even been documented. Even in the BBI reports talking about people not trusting their leadership, their government. How can we change this? What is it that we need to do so that we can now get to a point where we start trusting our politics?
Why don't we ask, how can the government be more trustworthy? Let's start with that.
But who is government if it is not you and me working together, building a national ethos, as a BBI report says, building the nationhood.
I believe you have a point.
Nation that we all belong to.
There's
we
the
feel
institutions that there is a trust deficit between the citizens and the government in this country, and it's primarily the institutions. People don't trust the institutions. I don't think they're sufficiently strong, perhaps because we're a young nation. But we can't disregard what CT is saying in terms of that trust deficit. Our trust and confidence in public institutions in this country is
very low,
at an all-time low, I think. And when it comes to something like the IEBC, which is the cornerstone of commissions in terms of our existence and peaceful existence as Kenyans, I think it's important that we build this trust. How can you build this trust?
You know,
it's difficult because remember where we were in 2007 when we went down.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody trusted the police. Mm-hmm. Nobody trusted the judiciary. Nobody trusted the electoral body. So everything was down. Everything was down.
Who do people trust? Their tribe.
That's a question. That's a question
their
we
tribe,
need
their
to
clan.
answer.
It goes all the way
their
down.
pastor.
No. It's not. It's not. I don't think it's that simple. It is easier to use mistrust as a tool for presenting your views to the world rather than take responsibility. Taking responsibility is harder. When Madam Commissioner talked about the role of the citizenry, we do not hold our leaders accountable. We don't. Even the media, us, we've been accused of not holding people accountable or taking sides. And those accusations do find fertile ground. There are instances when it is true. But ask yourself the simple question. Why is it that every 5 years, for most Kenyans, elections are a life and death issue?
And that ties up with the question that Nyeri has asked, that IEBC being a cornerstone in the whole process. Why don't people trust the IEBC?
Actually, it's unfortunate, but you're the scapegoat.
Yeah, actually, it is true.
You are the
IEBC is a scapegoat.
Yes.
And I'll say this with examples. I have observed elections in a number of countries on the continent and beyond. And just our neighbors in Tanzania. 2015, I was observing elections there. Election materials delayed, and we were in a certain polling station. And when we drove into that particular polling station, the people just came, approached us and asked, have you now brought the papers? Thinking we are part of the electoral team. And we told them, no, we are not the...
They weren't angry.
They were not angry.
Suspicious.
They waited.
They stepped back and said, ni sawa, tutasubiri tu. Why can't we have that kind of attitude? Attitude. Because the attitude in Kenya is that, they'll steal our votes. That's where we start from.
Yes.
That's where we start from. In fact, if it was in Kenya, that vehicle would have been stoned. That you have delayed and you are still coming to talk to us. How dare you?
But you know, Madam...
In fact, we would have had a lot of security around us.
Madam Commissioner, I have there's a little advantage of chronology on my side.
Tell us the example when you come out of the break.
Yes.
We're getting into the top of the hour. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. We have on the hot seat Lilian Mahiri Zaja. She's a former vice chairperson of the IEBC, the Isaac Hassan-led IEBC. We'll ask her to stay with us for a couple of more minutes, maybe about 10 minutes, as CT gives us his chronological example of what happens in this country. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. Good morning, 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
So there's an ongoing demonstration at the Kayole Junction on the Eastern Bypass, and that is affecting traffic right around the GSU, and then it's snaking all the way down that road. Traffic is now 5 lanes, and there's some ongoing fires that have been set on the road, so that is affecting traffic. It's not a good situation right now. We don't know the exact problem, but I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. On the Southern Bypass, of course, there are the police on the road. A bypass was meant to help you bypass traffic, but in this case we have traffic on the bypass, so it's a bit of a sticky situation. Everywhere else seems to be flowing smoothly, except for Mombasa Road, where we do have issues. Of course, the spillover from North Airport Road then onto Mombasa Road, and trying to get into the city is going to be a problem. Coming off Langata Road now is much better at the T-Mall roundabout, and then approaching Bagavi Way, and then getting onto Ngong Road at the City Mortuary roundabout, getting into the CBD. Not much of a problem coming out of Westlands or the Thika Superhighway way, either doing much better. Of course, it is the hour when things have staved off. Anything out of the ordinary, do let us know. The number to call is 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Live streaming the show on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Join the conversation on Twitter at Spice FM KE, and the hashtag is The Situation Room, CT Chronology.
Well, what I was saying was the issue about our elections. Mistrust didn't start with the IEBC. In 1966, there was a by-election in Nakuru town. I happened to live in Nakuru, and I was a child then. How old was I? 8 years old. But I do remember that the discussion, one of the things that was peculiar about that election was that ballot boxes were found in Njoro River. The sitting MP at that particular time had been somebody called Achieng' Oneko. And that election was won by somebody called Mark Mwithaga, who continued to be MP for the longest time and had the distinction of actually winning an election while still in prison.
Oh, fantastic. Miracles do happen. Jerry was doubted previously.
What I'm saying is the issue of mistrust in our politics didn't begin yesterday. And that's why I said the IEBC has scapegoats. Yes.
I'm glad you do.
No, I actually do know that you're scapegoats. I do know, because the burden that is placed on this one institution for a national madness, it's actually too much for any one institution.
And I've argued before that we need to find a way of completely insulating the IEBC from the players. There's no way, and I gave you the example of referees. There's no way teams can come up and start saying, we need to choose who's going to be the referee for our next match. Or even start arguing with the referee in the middle of the game. If you have anything to argue against the referee, take it to a higher body. And this is why we have courts. So this thing of politicians constantly coming to talk about IEBC, in fact, even now, we're talking about tinkering the IEBC, allowing political parties to choose who is going to be in the IEBC. This is where manipulation of IEBC, not even manipulation of IEBC, this is just where the
it is manipulation.
And intimidation.
That's where it begins.
Actually.
And you know what?
The IEBC.
You have to play by the rules. If they don't play by the rules, then the referee's hands are tied to the rules. So you'd not blame the referee.
Do we allow
misplaced blame?
Do we allow the politician to choose the governor of the central bank?
No, we don't.
Yes. No. Do we allow them to choose who heads KRA? Now, these are institutions that touch our lives on a daily basis.
Constantly.
Yes. Do we allow them to choose who heads the police?
They say because this is a political process, therefore they must be involved. Because
in fact, more so because it's a political process. More so because
it's why they should not touch it.
It's just why they should not be involved in that process at
all.
But how
because
do we
the
ensure
moment
that
they
we
touch
this?
Is it them to ensure? It's not them to ensure.
No, how do we ensure that we get this? That we get this?
To get an independent
Politicians
body.
have, for over time, made sure that they are the ones who appear to be the most important stakeholder in an election. Yet they are the least important, in my opinion. The voter is the most important stakeholder in an election. He's the one who's participating in electing a new leader. you as a candidate, you sit there, wait. If people elect you,
if they elect you, well and good.
Well
if they
and
don't,
good.
thank you very much. Carry on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I actually do agree with that, because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, whereby they believe that they're now being put into a position of lordship, and then they must be involved. Then when it comes to how they are selected, and then must ask questions.
These people are not put in that position. They demand and they force themselves into those positions
and feel that they should be involved in the process, because woe be unto the individual who has anything to do with them not being elected.
Any space that has inherent power within it will be occupied by our lawmakers. They become the most important people, and their game becomes the most important game in town.
Back to Lillian for a second. Lillian, as a woman in this game and at the helm of the game, so to speak, what sort of hurdles have you come across? Do you think your gender has played any, has been instrumental in any of the adversities you might have faced, any of the struggles you might have faced? Is it difficult up there? Do you stand out as a woman?
You might want to assess me and give me that scorecard. But I think personally, it was really an honor to serve on the IEBC Commission. And I think once you understand your mandate, that you have a constitutional mandate, and you are accountable to the people, then your gender should not matter.
It's not an issue.
Yeah. You just discharge and exercise your powers in accordance with the law, and know that finally, if somebody has an issue with whatever decisions you've made, they will go to court. They will not say that woman, Lillian ABCD, did this. No. It will be a question of putting the facts and checking them against what the law says.
Sure.
But I think as a woman, yeah, it's only a hurdle when you want to put yourself down, when you're not confident about what you're doing. I think that is where one can have problems, because politicians can be intimidating as key players in the game. They can be intimidating, but you have to stand up, tell them the truth, as they say, speak truth to power, and you'll be free. So once they know the truth and that you are doing your work, that's it.
Oh, fantastic.
You are accountable to the people.
Madam Commissioner, would you say that women in positions of authority are actually judged by a much higher standard and perhaps treated unfairly?
Sometimes.
I am of the view that
sometimes.
they are. Let me start from that point of view.
Sometimes they are, and I agree that they add stick shifts, to another level, because people look at you like, they want to question your competence in the first place.
You're subject to a higher level of scrutiny.
Yeah, they look at your qualifications. They look at your competence.
Your background,
and how your
social life is a lot more.
Yeah, you're put on a pedestal that
But
as
at
they
the
say.
sometimes don't you find that the society also, because of the level that it has elevated women to, you're also expected, for example, to behave in a certain way because, you're the mother of the country.
Eric, which level is this that they've been elevated to?
Remember when Sabina Sheke was here, the Muranga woman rep, and she was talking about, when you find, for example, a current crop of women leaders who are behaving in certain manner that is completely unbecoming of
these are the stereotypes, reinforcements that we don't need to know. A woman should be able to go out.
And men get away with so much more.
Absolutely. A man can sit down and have a drink.
Exactly.
A woman does that. It's considered
and that's exactly
an abomination.
Unbecoming. Absolutely.
That's exactly
These
my
are the
point.
stereotypes we don't
Because
want.
men are doing it and it's wrong, it doesn't mean that the woman should also do it.
It's not wrong. It's only wrong when a woman does it. It's not
it's
wrong
wrong even when men
for a
do
woman
it.
to sit down and have a drink.
Even when men do it.
It is not wrong. It is only wrong if a woman does it.
It is unfortunate that
so
the
don't
society
reinforce those
portrays
stereotypes.
women, always portrays women in a negative way. So a woman has to work twice as hard to show that, yes, I'm competent, yes, I'm qualified, if not overqualified to be here. And sometimes even now in Kenya, we have issues of ethnicity. Somebody wants to know, huyu ametoka wapi? Huyu ni nani? Hii jina gani? People question, They see names they've never seen and they want to question.
Do you think that's intuitive? Because I did question when I saw your name.
You did?
I did. I couldn't help it. I don't know. It's
Madam
become
Commissioner,
part and parcel of society.
I face that all the time.
Me too.
And I almost did ask you. It's not a Kenyan name, yeah. But I think sometimes we push that bar a little bit.
Right.
Even over and below the table,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not really conducive for women, and does not augur well, because and the media also plays a role here in this negative portrayal of women. They are not given the space. Even all these discussions, I'm happy to be here. In most instances, you find it's
Jeff Koinange, it's
male dominated.
Men.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
they don't
Manuals.
look for the women. They say hakuna wanawake. Where? There's so many women out there.
Where are they looking is the question.
Yeah, where are they looking? Yeah, where are they
it's
looking?
like
There's so many women.
It's like the anecdotal slur where somebody goes to a place and finds a group of women and declares hakuna watu.
But they are there. Women are there, but because we have been intimidated, we are portrayed as the weaker person, as that one who waits to be instructed. Then you take a back seat and you always want to watch from the sidelines. But if women are given a seat at the table, they are able to make better decisions.
Absolutely.
And of course manage processes, if not better than men.
Thank you very much.
Barack Obama would agree with you.
Completely.
Yes, he would agree with you.
I want to thank you very much, Lillian, for coming. We had on the hot seat this morning Lillian Mahiriza. She's a former chairperson of the IEBC. Vice chairperson of the IEBC. What are you doing now, Lillian? You're
among the many things that you're doing.
You're in many things.
Which is the prominent one that comes
to mind? Pick the most prominent one.
I'm not in many things, but I thank God that I'm still serving the people of Kenya. I'm serving on the board of the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, formerly ERC, recently changed name to EPRA. And I'm also serving on the board of
Are you not the director?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Important we mentioned that.
Yes. Director. Initially we were called commissioners. So director at EPRA. And I'm also a director at the Kenya Petroleum Refineries Limited in Mombasa.
Asante sana for joining us, and we'll invite you again, of course, to come and have conversations. This time it will be about energy. We had that kind of conversation about our energy, petroleum needs, and what we are doing and not doing. So we'll invite you to come and have a conversation on that.
I'll be glad to come.
We wish you a good day.
Thank you very much.
13 minutes after 9 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice up your life. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Spice up your life. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So, letter to Kennedy Tariq Obima, a.k.a. King Kaka. I was calling him Kaka King for the longest. 7 things he ought to have known. That is what is on Waigoro's Twitter. Of course, this is a talk that was lighting up the streets of Twitterati last night. Waigoro will be suing, or has threatened to sue with a demand letter, Kennedy Tariq Omimba, better known as King Kaka. Of course, he was behind the song Jinga Nyinyi, Wajinga Nyinyi, and there was some slurs in there, some sort of insinuations, what I would call defamatory statements with no truth regarding different leaders, of which one of them was Anne Waigoro, and the NYS, of course, was mentioned. We could look at this in many different ways. First of all, who is attacking Waigoro? Because this is a clear attack. If you look at it from a political, strategic point of view, it's a clear attack on Anne Waigoro. The singer or the poet or indeed the artist is merely a tool through which to attack Anne Waigoro. Waiguru. But most importantly, it's the right for Anne Waiguru to defend herself, because there was some backlash online yesterday when she spoke out and said that she will be suing for defamation. And you had people, two different camps. There was individuals saying, I stand with King Kaka. Some people talked about his freedom of expression and freedom of speech. But of course, your freedom of speech does have limitations in as far as it doesn't impede on my space. And although this is a public leader, and this is where it becomes contentious, because you do also want the ability to scrutinize and criticize public leaders, once you start making claims and throw them into the public sphere, back again into the public sphere, because of course he's not the originator of this statement. These allegations have been made previously, but of course there's no evidence of corruption in the NYS by Waiguru. So can Waiguru sue? Absolutely. In terms of tort law and libel, absolutely. Did this guy make a statement, a false statement? Yes. Was there an audience, or did a third party receive it? Yes. Was it harmful or damaging to the subject matter? Yes. Now, as to whether we should be suing, or public figures should be suing individuals is right or not, that's up for debate. But in terms of Waiguru having a right to sue, absolutely. I think she was it was absolutely correct that she went for him, because otherwise we leave ourselves open to such slurs. If she doesn't set the example, even as leaders, you cannot have such accusations made about you. Now, it was a poet, but the reach was very wide, considering the age group, the target audience, the sort of construct and messaging, the way it was packaged, of course, for the youth, and with the internet, the spread of it as well. So it had a very wide reach in terms of audience. And I'm glad that she has gone out and defended herself. And I hope that he has to, at the very least, not even damages. I doubt Waiguru is after money. So not even damages from this fella. I think at the very least is recant the statements within the song, and then, of course, a public apology.
What is fair comment? What's the meaning and definition of fair comment?
A fair comment is a perspective that you can have that doesn't have malice in it. It can be interpreted differently in different jurisdictions depending on context as well. But you can make a fair comment. But remember, this is an accusation of a crime that carries with it a custodial sentence. She's being accused of stealing money. Now, unless you have evidence, of which, if you do, take it to the DCI and the DPP, they'll be overjoyed given the sort of current overzealous or crackdown on corruption as we stand in Kenya. So unless you have evidence, you cannot go around making such comments, whether or not they have been said before. Those allegations have been made, and I think that was the defense of those who were standing up for King Kaka.
Right, because people have said it before,
it's already in the public domain. No, the law of tort and defamation and libel does not work like that. The fact that you have then gone on and repeated something that was either a rumor, gossip, or false allegations, it actually can, in fact, act as a completely separate new case from the originator.
Because I'm reading here, the fair comment definition is a comment made which, though defamatory, is not actionable, as it is an opinion on a matter of public interest, a defense to a claim alleging defamatory remarks.
It is, but this is an accusation. It's not a comment. It's not an analysis. There's malice in this. It's an accusation of a crime.
It's an opinion.
No, it's not an opinion.
It is an opinion.
It's
Somebody has expressed his opinion.
He felt that she did X, Y, Z.
He's being accused of a crime. It's not an opinion. She is being accused. He is saying she did this.
No.
Perhaps if she started saying, I think with the information I have that Waiguru might be guilty, that's very different. He is saying Waiguru is guilty. So yes, fair comment. And especially with public figures, it does extend far and wide. There's a much wider berth for individuals to make these comments. In terms of repeating, I want to deal a bit more with repeating the statement, because that's what's come to the fore more than the fair comment, and we will deal with the fair comment. What's come to the fore is that, well, this was already in the public domain. There are people with what we would call privilege or permission to repeat defamatory comments, people such as lawyers in a court of law. You can repeat it and it wouldn't be considered defamatory. You can have people in the news quote the article and that wouldn't be considered defamatory because you have a special permission. But if you're going out to disperse information and influence people, especially if there's malicious intent, because there's been a lot of jurisprudence on this. And the landmark case, I think, was the New York Times, and I forget his name, but it was a famous politician. I'll go into the case itself. But what was decided there is intent and malice is crucial. Now, if you look at this and you look at who is behind this video, because there are certain very powerful politicians that are not mentioned in this song. Now, that is very telling. And we know that the political battleground, especially within Central, is being fought by two individuals, one of which is this powerful politician who has not been mentioned in this song whatsoever, yet he is renowned for corruption cases. In fact, his nickname is to do with some of the corruption cases that he has been or gossip or rumored to have been involved in. So if this was a genuine case of just expressing oneself, he would have mentioned all these people. But when you look at the political connotations and nuances, you start to see that certain individuals are not mentioned in this song. Yet they are, I was going to say world-renowned, but they're very well known in Kenya in terms of at least gossip and rumors for having been involved in corruption.
How many politicians are mentioned in this song?
I don't know. You tell me, Eric.
One.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a mention of how the country is going,
and there were
and everything else goes into the government.
No, they do mention the DP in terms of they insinuate.
A lot of the drive was for Kenyans to take
Kenyans.
cognizance of the fact that a lot is going on around them, that they shouldn't actually just take lying down, that Kenyans shouldn't take lying down. And especially when he the phrase I think he used often was wajinga nyinyi, as in you got to be able to look at this differently. Money is being stolen from public coffers over and over and over again, and we still sit down and we still vote the same people back into power. And this is obviously something that has resonated with people across the board. I don't think we've seen something like this where music has been used as a platform for people to stand up and take notice, in Kenya at least. And so of course that would be that would be
they have
to this extent where he's using the kind of language that he has been using to actually call people out and say you're actually being stupid by not standing up and taking and making your voice heard.
You do have a point in that the language he uses cuts across the board and every Kenyan can understand it. But there have been musicians who sang in vernacular who have made very serious social and political commentary. And some of them have been popular because of that.
Right.
Yes, they have. And musicians are poets. So it's a message that has been carried. But the truth is this: if you look at the definition of fair comment, again, there's the issue of malice.
Was he being malicious towards this politician?
Yes. And also remember, it has the content of what he's saying must also depict this very absence of malice. Yes. And it must be something that can be founded with evidence or can be supported with evidence. That's when it's a fair comment. If there's an absence of that support, you cannot argue that whatever he was saying was actually intended to be fair.
There's a difference between fair comment and fact. If you're making a comment separate from the facts that are out there, that's something different. But if you're reinforcing and reinstating a fact in this case being a false fact that has been based on rumor and gossip and is in the public domain, as you say, then that wouldn't be considered fair comment. Of course, this is down to judges' interpretation, and there's previous case law on this. What you can see here is malice. There is no doubt. You mentioned that only one politician was mentioned. We do have DP Ruto mentioned colloquially or very subtly when they say, we know who will be president in 2022. So the song actually is favorably making statements about him, but very negative about Waigoro. And then you start to see the politics play out.
Do you know who will be president in 2022?
If you listen to the song, they do talk about
and how do you know that's
DP in 2022 and so on, because he's the only one who has claimed that he will be. And if you had further information, you would start to see that this is an attack on Waigoro by another politician, perhaps the one who was being spoken favorably about in the song. And
so
the artist was simply being used as an instrument.
The song specifically to get at the governor of Kirinyaga.
Didn't craft the song, perhaps sponsored it and got the poet to go down this direction.
So the sole purpose of the song was to discredit this individual.
And not to get Kenyans to start thinking in a different way.
What do Kenyans need to start thinking about? What don't we know?
Really?
No.
What don't we know? That there's corruption? Do you think this song is really going to start getting us
Yes,
to
it will.
think differently?
So
Start thinking
Tujiangalie
differently.
by
Let me
Sauti
just
Sol
look.
was also sponsored.
Yes, of course it was.
This to me
and who
looks
was it
like a
targeting
political.
this
Yeah,
time?
who was it
To
targeting?
me, it looks
Because
like a
the song,
political
Tujiangalie,
instrument.
tumelala, tuko kotita, tunajibizana, like
To
what
me,
people
as
have
somebody
been
who
doing
has been involved
by
in
Sauti
political
Sol. Who was it?
communications, as somebody who's been involved in political communications, and I understand the different tools at hand, what can be used from music, social media platforms, TV programming, news articles, and so on. This, to me, stands as clear evidence that it's a tool being used against Anne Waiguru, and therein
Also,
lies the
people
malice.
who are in political communication are also narrow-minded sometimes. They see everything as an attack. That is for sure. Politicians will always see, whenever a politician sees somebody speaking,
Anything
and
comes
there's-
out, it's an attack on me.
it's an attack on me. If you say anything to critique you, or I'm even talking about something
Just
in the
to
mood,
differs with you.
Just has to differ.
It has to be an attack.
Of course, that
Who has
exists.
sponsored you? Who has sent you? Who are these
Absolutely.
enemies
Your
of you
antenna
of
is up.
mine? Who are,
No, your antenna is up, and you're more sort of looking
But not
confirmation
always
bias.
founded.
But when you look at this and you look at which politicians are mentioned, which politicians are not mentioned, considering what we know in terms of rumor mongering and corruption in this country, some politicians stand out more than others. If there was even mention, then perhaps my analysis would have been different.
Let me
As
ask the
things
question
stand, there is
again.
positive.
Did he mention a name?
Yes, he says Waiguru. That is the only politician mentioned in this.
There's also another one, actually.
Which
There's
one? You
also
said it was
another
one.
There's-
Sorry, I relied on your statement to my detriment.
There's another one. There's uko na account offshore zimejaa mani, na account ya Dota ya Waititu iko na depo ya 100 meter. Ukipelekwa kotini ni escort ya polisi kama 6. Ladies and gentlemen, official speech by Mba Mwitu.
Waitito is mentioned, okay. Sorry, I took your word for it when you said it's just one politician that's
So
mentioned.
it's all right.
Can we listen
so
to
the
it?
song is about Waititu and Waiguru.
At least
the question is also-
at least Pastor Nganga amewashinda anadanganya hadharani.
No, Pastor Nganga is being praised in the song.
Amewashinda anadanganya
No,
hadharani.
he's not being praised.
What does that mean?
He's lying.
He's lying.
Cheated people.
He's publicly lying.
He's a lie monger. That's what he's being called.
But everybody...
And then 290 plus 10 plus a few others, members of parliament. Hapo parliament kwani mnashida gani? Simtuibia kiplani.
Yes, I mean, stop robbing us, obviously.
Right. So, I mean, then again, you know, it's interesting
The
to note
youth
that
ni Moody at 90 and Gekonyo at 80.
because of this song, I don't think
We have many people and companies.
It would
KQ
be
has been
interesting
mentioned.
to
Help has
know-
been mentioned.
It would be interesting to know whether public perception of these
No.
individuals has actually changed because of this song. It could be something that was there. It is probably something that maybe did not come out in the public, but I don't see that anybody has now changed their thinking of what they thought corruption was in this country, or public stealing or public thievery, that we said, oh, okay, I've now realized that it's actually existent because of this song.
But it has raised your conscience.
That's what I'm saying. It has raised the conscience, but it doesn't mean that the thought was not there whatsoever.
No, there are things you need to keep reminding people of.
Exactly. But what
Yes.
I'm saying is that it doesn't. What I'm saying is that we. I mean, it's like people will begin to think of a certain politician in a certain way as a result of this song. The thought was there. Maybe it was latent, but it was there all the same.
Remember,
No. It does reinforce a negative, a sort of a negative
Perspective.
image, a negative image of Waiguru. These are negative comments. These are allegations whereby she's never been charged. Remember, you know, sadly there is a court case going on.
Hey, Jerry, all these people who've been mentioned, somehow we're just still back to Waiguru. Why
Because
it
we're
doesn't
talking
count?
about the defamation. We're talking about the lawsuit that she's put. She's asking for damages.
Then
so that
Waititu
is what I'm
also
talking
to
about.
put one.
He can do that if he wants. He hasn't. I am focusing on Waiguru today because she has. And what I was going to say is, you can't say that it didn't damage her image in any way, because there are court cases going on of which people are aware of. The media might not be amplifying in the way that it should, but there's a court case going on in NYS, and people are starting to see, actually, perhaps these allegations might have been false, and they were weaponized and used to bring somebody who was powerful down. It could be the case.
And you don't think
now,
that...
if you play a song like this, you can reinforce negative images about her. You can reinforce, it's gossip. You're
But
reinforcing
consider
gossip.
that if you take the case to court, you're reinforcing it even further.
No,
because now it's a point. It's going to be a point of
public.
No,
yes,
no.
exactly.
The first,
Look at now.
there is that.
We
And
are
that's
discussing
that's
now.
her prerogative.
Exactly.
There is that, and that's her prerogative. But if she goes, it shows a sense of I I need to defend myself because I am innocent. You can't do this to me. And I'm not going to say because I don't want the attention, I'm going to keep quiet because there's negative attention.
But what about all the things that people have been saying over time?
Was that the best way to approach this matter?
And what about other sentiments that
you
people have
also
had
want-
over time concerning the same case? Is she going to jump out at everything that everybody has
No,
ever
I
said
think
over this matter?
I think this will set a precedent in terms of what you can come out and throw at Waigoro. Remember, she is going for central kingpin, and there are going to be attacks on her. And the monkey on her back is this NYS. Anytime she's going up, people will throw NYS
Let
at
me just
her.
inform you, it will not go away.
It will go away as the cases proceed.
It won't.
The case is in court. As it proceeds, and perhaps we have convictions and people see who was behind it, then it will go away.
Even if it went to court and she was pronounced innocent, the case still won't go away because people will not believe that she was innocent. Those who want to believe that way, those who believe she's innocent will believe she's innocent. Yes.
You will find some people whose minds are changed when they see who was actually involved, when they have the full story. They might have gone with some of these allegations and the media frenzy and believed them, but when they see the evidence as to what happened, do you know $10 billion was 10 billion shillings was actually stolen after she left? Now, who was responsible for that? When the media doesn't talk about these things, you leave certain images and certain stories and frames in people's minds. And if you have court cases that prove who it was and that she wasn't involved, of course some people will change their mind, especially anybody discerning and objective.
Jerry, she could very well be a victim but remember, her case comes after other famous cases, Anglo-Leasing, Goldenberg, all right? And now then we had the case of the 2 dams and others, SGR. The problem is, when you have issues that keep coming up, names come up, and somehow the conclusion at best is murky. She, unfortunately, is coming up against that background, and so the believability factor is not in her favor.
Well, that's why she must defend herself, so it doesn't keep coming up out of malice, out of as a political tool, out of fun, whatever it is. And I'm glad she's defending her name.
Nicholas Biwott filed several cases against people on libel and defamation. He won a number of them. Public perception, did it change?
Not an iota.
Not a bit.
There we go.
But
it's 28 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a look at the traffic and then we can open up the phone lines 0719 012 600. Good morning.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
So now we know what's happening on the Eastern Bypass, Utawala area. A young man was arrested by police the other night and later found dead. And this is the reason why youth are on the streets demanding for answers, and thus the demonstrations that we see with tires being burnt and the 5-lane traffic that is happening there this morning. So this is why. Be careful as you approach the area, because we're not quite sure exactly how far this has gone, except for the fact that we're seeing quite a lot of traffic and we see that there have already been fires on the road. That's the reason why we found the answer. So please, again, approach with caution. Now, getting off Mombasa Road was a little bit difficult. Much better now. Of course, it is the time around where we see traffic will stave off in certain parts of the city. Right, so apart from the Eastern Bypass where we have this problem, now going around to Kariobangi, then carrying on through Tawala, I mean, it seems to be quite a mess, and quite a lot has been affected just because of that. Apart from that, everything else seems to be moving along smoothly, coming off Mombasa Road, Langata Road and Ngong Road and into the city centre. So not so bad for now. Definitely much better than we saw earlier. Anything out of the ordinary that you see that we can share, let us help you keep you moving. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
Interesting. Just before we went into the break, you talked about the late Nicholas Biwott and the lawsuits that he brought against those that had defamed him, or those libel or slander. And you said he won, but it didn't change public perception. According to who? How do you know public perception wasn't changed?
Well,
Eric?
City's perception
Just because
didn't
mine changed.
Mine didn't change.
Mine did.
Allow
Did
me
yours
to
change?
Mine did.
allow me to
What-
respond.
which case-
mine did.
which case changed
No,
yours?
I'm not going to go into it, but mine did.
Which when?
No. Mine did. I actually have very positive views of the man.
At what
After
point-
he was
at what
able
point
to
did yours
win.
change?
No. After I found out that the newspapers were actually selling wrong stories about him, I was like, well, maybe there is another side to this guy, and I bothered to find out. So it did change my perception, and furthermore, it acts as a deterrent to people who are going to further tarnish your name. So just because your mind wasn't changed, there's a reason the way the law is the way it is. If something is published, it is likely to influence people's opinions. Now, because yours isn't influenced, it's not to say other people's isn't influenced.
Are you trying to say, for instance, in Nyeri, that the people, let's go a little back into some of the major corruption or scandals we've had in this country, like Goldenberg. Do you think that the names of the people who are involved in that Goldenberg, if you talk about individuals like Patni, or you talk about individuals, government officials, who later came involved in, say, the Anglo leasing and so forth, do you imagine that the court cases that followed, and some of them were actually found not to be guilty, you imagine that the perception that money had been stolen, for instance, that it suddenly went down and people believe that money was not stolen?
No. Money being stolen is one thing. As to who stole it is another.
That's the point. Money can't
No.
steal itself.
Yes.
There are individuals
There's a lot
who
of people
are involved
who are
in
working
stealing
there,
it.
yes.
And that's why you had the scandal in the first place. So do you actually think if people don't believe the money was stolen, that they would feel something different about the people who are involved in that?
No,
The answer
if
is
they
no,
knew,
they wouldn't.
no, if they knew who stole it, then it makes a difference. Because if there was a lot of players in NYS, and we can see the cases are in court. I wish the media was as excited as they were when they were reporting on Waigoro and NYS, because
But they were.
the
The
case
people they
is
reported about
ongoing. No, the cases
confessing, carrying
are
jelly
ongoing.
bags
A lot
and
of
all. That's all Waigoro who was
those were
reported to have
theatrics.
carrying bags.
But
Jerry,
all linked to Waigoro.
Jerry, I don't think you seem to understand
cannot,
what we're
was
no.
discussing.
You cannot
We are
deny
not-
the fact
Jerry.
that reporting something will create an
Jerry,
impression,
no
whether
one-
good or bad. Eric, you might be immune to it, so whatever you read,
Jerry,
it doesn't inform your
Jerry,
opinion.
when you
But
start
most
speaking,
people,
the
when they
problem
read
is you
something,
also don't listen.
Yes, but you're interrupting me. When you read
Because
something,
you are
it
saying
will
the same thing
influence
for the
you.
fifth time and
Let me
we've
say
heard
it
it.
for the 100th time. Maybe somebody has just switched on the radio.
Jerry, no one is criticizing Waiguru. If you are at the helm of an organization that has a scandal, it is you who will be blamed. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. Please understand. The reason why we're giving these examples of previous scandals is because the people who were involved in those ministries at the time were the ones who were held, they were answerable.
That is fine.
And
That
she
is-
accepted that, and
she
that's
is
why she
not
stepped aside.
criminally
In fact, she actually
liable.
said, I am a whistleblower in this one. I am stepping aside because of this. Because she realizes the weight of her office. And she stepped aside because of that. Now, that's one thing. Public perception is
It's
the
a
other
different thing altogether. That's what we're trying
Was
to
it
say.
Now,
public perception
what frames public perception?
It's
It is
because
the
we have a
media, it
history
is
of
the
public servants
newspaper,
stealing.
and the
so-
media and the newspapers and songs and poetry, they do shape public
Jerry,
perception.
the
So
media
if somebody
doesn't involve itself in the theft or the corruption. They report
but
it.
and how they report it, how frequently they report it, how they frame it is very important. Now, the way the media had reported this previously, it was allegations. Now, people will not make the difference or will not want to discern that allegations are very different from an actual accusation
People
in
might.
terms of being
They may
charged.
want to. For example,
not everybody.
allegations against
People will
Kidero
see
are
that.
allegations. Even when you talk
People-
about
no,
that here.
he has been charged. He's in court.
Yes,
Kidero is in
they're
court. It's
still
very
allegations.
different.
But you
They are
treat it-
allegations.
but you
he
talk
has
about
been
him as though he's
charged.
guilty.
It's very different.
Those are
He's in
allegations.
court. That
He
is
is
my
in
opinion.
court. It hasn't ended.
My opinion.
Your perception.
My opinion, yes.
Was
Which
it
is
shaped by
informed.
the media?
Yes, some of it, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So
Thank
it was
you.
shaped by the media
So you
because
cannot-
it was reported.
Eric, what are you trying to say? That the media doesn't shape our perceptions?
No,
Or
information
these-
out there. Information generally shapes perception, whether
Thank
it comes
you. Now,
through the
this
media or
poetry-
social media
or
or
gossip.
conventional
Right.
media or bar talk, wherever
Yes.
it comes
now,
from,
this
it shapes
poetry
perception.
and the wide reach that it has shaped perceptions, and these perceptions are false in terms, or not the perceptions, but the statements through which these perceptions are being shaped are actually false, and that is all Waigoro is fighting. She's allowed to defend herself. There's
Yes,
a
she
reason
is.
defamation and libel exists.
She is.
You understand? This wasn't something
She
that
is.
somebody concocted
But
out
in
out
so
of the night.
doing-
It affects your life. It's injurious. It is harmful to your reputation.
In so doing, she is furthering this debate. And the
That's why we're
question
asking,
I am asking
politically,
is this
that
the wisest
best route?
position? Is this the smartest thing for her to have done under the circumstances?
I think because, remember, she is going for a top position and people are going to look for ways to hit at her, use different tools. And as I said, NYS, given the rumors were in the headlines for the longest, they're the easiest to hit her with in terms of perception. So this is a good place to nip it in the bud, make sure that she sets an example of this guy so that anybody who comes at her, because this will be a way to sully her name as she gains prominence within Central. You can see clearly she's going for that Central leadership. You can see clearly she's aligned herself with Raila, who of course is going for the presidency. So you can see she is looking at the helm of leadership. She is going to have people fighting her. And they're not just fighting her because she's going up there, but they're also fighting her. Remember,
just like the DP is fought constantly and he hasn't sued. Let's open the phone lines. Let's open the phone lines. Brian calling in from Mombasa. Good morning, Brian.
Morning to you. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, I hope you're doing well there.
Yes, we are.
Good morning.
Okay, Mombasa is too hot.
Poleni.
As the topic you are discussing. Now, I wanted to say something. It's high time we as Kenyans realize that we are duped by our leaders into believing they are always innocent in whatever they do. Because one, at the end of the day, the buck never stops with anybody in our Kenyan leaders. You see, when something happens like Waiguru, you are discussing Waiguru about King Kaka. Waiguru was at the aim of NYS. Now, she was supposed to monitor and make sure that everything is going on as supposed to be. Because if you look at other countries, a minister has resigned in China because a train apparently killed the people. But because he's the minister in charge of transport, decides he has to resign because the buck stops with him.
Yep.
Now, in our politics, King Kaka has just put things in the open. He has mentioned Waiguru, he has mentioned Waititu, he has mentioned Sonko a little bit somewhere, I think. Sonko dancing in the office. So he has mentioned a lot of people. Now, this is one person who has just come out, fire blazing, as is. Is he the one that has been attacked alone?
I think
no.
she's looked. She's looked at it.
True.
I think she's looked at it and analyzed it and realized that perhaps, well, this is how I would view it. There's some individuals that are not mentioned in this, and those are my opponents. Could this be malicious and have been curated as a political instrument to work against me? And whether or not this is the case, I'm going to defend myself because I can see where this is going. I'm going for a high position. I'm pushing for leadership within Central in terms of succession politics. And if I let this go on, it could go out of hand. I'm nipping it in the bud, setting an example and creating a deterrent.
If I may interrupt you, do you think ethically we have our leaders who are actually in terms of ethicals wana tabia zile ambazo zinafaa kiongozi kuwa nazo? Because that is that's actually the best moment in terms of to analyze our leadership.
That's the bottom line.
Yes, the bottom line. Who wants actually we have like sycophants in terms of hyping up our leaders. We have sycophants in terms of protecting our tribes. We have sycophants in terms of protecting our parties. You understand? But we don't have the clear moral, ethical practice to see that actually this is the leader. Because you see, we have a selection of leaders. But the leaders we elect, all of them have issues. All of them have scandals.
I hear you, Brian.
And in Kenya, you'll find that there's no leader who has been charged actually in terms of corruption. All these cases, they normally go who and nobody, no case, no one is jailed. But
it doesn't go far. Brian, thank you. We hear you.
By the way,
let's hear from Lydia in Parklands. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your intelligent searching for best practice. I wanted to say my experience in the middle of 1990s, my mother's shop on Kenyatta Avenue, we would get orders from Count Boletti of the owner of International Casino. He would give us Kiondo orders to send to Italy. I used to go to his office to get the order to collect the check. And the staff used to talk among themselves, not to me, but to themselves. Oh, the executive son was here. last night. And then after a few days, the executive makes a roadside law. From today, you are not allowed to gamble in Kenya shillings. Now, if you want to take visitors there, you have to go to the bank and change your Kenya shillings into dollars. And if you lost in gambling, you have lost both ways, paying the bank commission and whatever. So the international casino collapsed. Count Volatia to leave the country in a hurry. I don't know whether he was threatened. That I don't know. And then we are told Kitten Somaya became the owner. Then we are told Kitten Somaya fell out and Kamlesh Patni became the owner. See now, and we always see in the media, Kitten Somaya travels with the executive in his entourage. He travels here, he travels there. Then a city council officer told me, even the United Touring Company, when it collapsed, the executive made a roadside law. From today, tours and shops are not allowed to accept foreign currency. There would be 3 Barclays banks on one road, 3 KCB banks on one road. The dollars were a lot. Then when he said nobody should accept dollars, my mother would say, can you go across the bank and change these dollars and pay for your kiondos in Kenya shillings? He said, I'm getting late to go to the airport. I can't stand for 2 hours.
So, Lydia, just to see that we are getting you clearly, well, you're talking about public perception and how public perception shapes people's opinions.
Yeah, and companies collapse. And then Kitten Somaya becomes the owner. Then even the marshals, Alibai became the owner of marshals. Then Kitten Somaya became the owner of marshals.
Alibai Sharif.
Then I don't know which one, but I know it is Alibai. And then Kitten Somaya became Kitten. They said he fell out in the newspaper.
So,
Kitten Somaya became
what is it
the owner.
about? What is it about perception then, Lydia, that you're raising? I mean, what's the point?
The owner. Then Kamlesh Patni sells marshals to the pensioners of Central Bank. Now, if one landlord...
Lydia, I think, Lydia,
we lost her.
I think, well, 0719-012-600, that's 0719-012-600. I didn't get exactly where Lydia was heading.
No,
I think
she was talking about impunity.
Impunity.
Because if you look at everyone who's involved in her story, I like the bit where they now sold it to pensioners. We know that marshals went belly up, so they sold them a shell. But Jerry, to you, you believe in the strongest possible terms that our courts at best are seriously tainted and that they cannot actually be trusted. They are the bottleneck to the provision of justice in this country. Now you have a situation where you have a governor who wants to take this thing to this institution that cannot be trusted fully. Again, the question that I'm raising, is this the wisest route for
best
her
route to take? Jefferson is calling from Kisumu. Good morning, Jefferson.
Hello, how are you guys?
Fine, thank you.
Good morning.
To me, I think Waiguru is just trying to be politically relevant. There is nothing to sue there. So he's just trying to be in the headlines as we go because it will not change the perception. You remember Martha Karua in 2007?
Yes.
When he made the wrong choice of defending injustice of election?
Yes.
It has never changed perception till date. However good she is a constitutional lawyer, she was at the wrong place at the right time.
So your perception hasn't been changed, but do you have evidence that other people's perceptions haven't been changed?
A lot of people. She cannot campaign. She cannot command the respect she had before because perception changed. So even with Waiguru, she can try, but it won't change.
She seems to have done very well to get the governorship in terms of support and leadership and the traction she has in Central.
She's a smart woman. She's a beneficiary of bad publicity. That is what propelled her to become Kiambu governor.
Kirinyaga. That's the other county, yes.
Yes, Kirinyaga governor. She's a beneficiary of bad publicity. So she knows what bad publicity does.
So she's riding this. Thank you, Jefferson.
Yes,
let's hear from Ian. Ian in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Fine, thank you.
Yes, how are you?
Tuko salama kabisa.
Yes, my point is that, you see, I don't want to mention names, but the perception about the public, we as the youth, is that the leaders, there's nothing that is being taken or action. So that's why we use these people like musicians in order to let our views being known. So as King Kaka, he should not be condemned a lot. I think we should give him space to express his views. As for Anne Waiguru, she needs to also do her own part in terms of development so that she can clear her name. Her name cannot be cleared by the media. She needs to clear her name by herself, so that as the case continues in court, then also the public perception will change.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ian. 0719-012-600. We're discussing, of course, the song Wajinga Nyinyi by King Kaka and the demand letter written by Kirinyaga Governor Waiguru asking him to pull it out of all social media platforms, failure to which he will proceed to court. And we're saying, we're asking today, is that the best way to do? And of course, Nyeri is saying this will serve as a deterrent, make sure that anybody else who wants to come attacking her on baseless allegations stops right there. It's 10 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning.
.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's interesting that caller, he talks about the musicians and in this case, this particular poet, King Kaka, and him reflecting the views of the youth. We also have to be cognizant of the fact that he also shapes the impressions and the minds of these very susceptible young minds. So he shapes their views, and this is what defamation is all about. This is what this case is all about. When you release a song of this nature and make certain statements that are false or are based on allegations or rumors that have not been proved, then you do shape perceptions, and this is what Anne Waiguru is fighting. It is injurious to her reputation. You can say it's already out there, but the repetition of it reinforces it. Remember, she was elected into office. She has a lot of supporters. She's gaining traction in the central region. She has a lot of supporters, but with that, of course, I think comes the haters or the political opponents who I think are behind this. Personally, from my personal point of view, somebody who would not want Waiguru to gain traction in Central is behind this, and there will be a lot. There will be a lot more to come, and whoever is behind this, I think, is also against Ruto. In essence,
what do you say of
not Ruto, rather Raila,
of the opinion by Jefferson, who says Anne Waiguru is basically just using this to also grab her?
It could be the case. It's an analysis. He's entitled to his perspective. That's one analysis. For me, I think she's using it to make a point that no, you will not use this against me. I can see the barrage of criticism that is going to come my way as I make headway in Central in selling Raila. So in essence, this is also a fight against Raila, believe it or not.
I actually believe that our Guru candidacy will work against Raila. Because every enemy that, as you claim, any enemy of Waiguru's will also become Raila's enemy. And probably Raila doesn't need them as enemies and has done nothing to gain them as enemies, and on his very own could actually get them as friends.
You could actually claim the inverse as well, that every friend will also become a friend.
In fact, I'll take it further. If Ruto could, the deputy president could, on his own volition and his own steam, get Central to actually stand behind him, what stops Raila from doing the same?
What stops Raila from
Why does he need Waiguru to actually sell him in Central?
Even Ruto needed a lot of people. If you heard of the rumors, of which I'll be careful to state that they're rumors, and I'm simply giving my opinion on those rumors, that people go to Karen to collect money and become Tanga-Tangarites, and that's what they've been doing, priming the ground to ensure, the priming the ground. These MPs go back to their backyard and prime the ground for Ruto to come in. Now, similarly, Waiguru could be going into Central to do this. I think as things stand politically, from my perspective, it would be very difficult. She doesn't need cash.
Why not?
Because she doesn't need
money.
Using money to prime the ground.
No, they're not using money to prime the ground. It's very different. With her, it's her conviction.
What are they using the money for?
For their rent seekers. They're being given money so they can actually move away from their ideologies and support Tanga. Now, what they use that money for, I don't know. But they already have they already have.
She does.
They already have the ground, which is their constituents. right? Now, they are paid to go and pass certain messages on to their constituents. Now, with Waiguru, her conviction, she doesn't need to be paid by anybody. She is leading this pack herself.
We know
she doesn't
this
need to be
by-
paid. This is my analysis from everything that I've seen going on. From the songs that I've seen, from the fact that she has come out clearly and...
you mean there's more songs
had
other than this one
meeting-
from, what is his name, Kaka Brown? What is it?
Brown Kaka.
King Kaka.
Oh, sorry, King, yes.
Him.
Okay, King, sorry,
Um,
King Kaka.
No, I think this is a political tool. I think she's done very well to actually come and face it head on
Well, you know,
using a legal framework.
Understood, but from one of the calls, it could be actually seen in another light. That she's come
Absolutely.
out,
It could
she's
be
come
seen in
out
a million
guns-
other lights.
Right,
In fact-
she's
in
come
fact,
out guns
she has seen an
blazing to show
opportunity.
that she wants to really protect something, and you can't attack me.
It could actually be the way we are talking about, somebody having sponsored this. It could also be her who sponsored this. Look, it comes out and immediately you ride on the song, and we, for 2 days now on this show
It
we've
could
discussed
be.
Anne Waiguru.
Why can't we just
Could
give
be.
the
whole
artist some
House of
credit?
Cards, Manenos.
The
That's
whole
a tactic that was
weekend, the whole
seen to have
weekend,
been
the
used by
King
the
Kaka
DP
song
as
comes
well.
out. The King Kaka song is actually 6 minutes long. Only one line mentions Anne Waiguru, but the conversation the whole weekend, the entire weekend,
For the last
has been
72
one
hours.
Anne Waiguru, Anne Waiguru. On this show yesterday, Anne Waiguru.
Who's
On
making
this
it
show
a
today,
conversation?
Anne
She's
Waiguru.
a very intelligent woman in terms of
No,
her
that
communications.
that
clearly.
particular caller clearly understood it, and
Got it
this,
right.
And this narrative that she is making Raila popular, Raila was already known in central
He was
Kenya.
known before
I
she
would
opened
argue
her mouth.
it is her
Absolutely.
who wants to build her profile by attaching herself to
Using
Raila.
In Central, I doubt it. But what this will
Remember,
definitely
she's popular
do,
in Kirinyaga, not Central.
Not Central Kenya.
What
Kirinyaga.
this will
One county.
definitely do to her, or for her rather, and perhaps maybe this is why she's actually capitalizing on it, is if it is indeed true that it is an attack on her by somebody else who's very interested in central votes and who she's come out openly and expressly that she's opposed to, if it is an attack on her by him, then of course central folk will protect their own. So it could win her some sympathy, some likability, and some support. So from that perspective, maybe she is capitalizing on this. She wants to highlight that I am being attacked by this very man who's coming to look for votes in central. He's attacking your very own. He's
How
attacking
many will she
me.
shout at? If another one
Jerry-
pops up tomorrow,
Jerry,
will she try to stamp
our
out that fire as well?
Our
See?
president.
How many will come?
Our president comes from central Kenya. And with his presidency, we are seeing a perception that central is divided. With this perception, when the president is no longer president, do you think they're actually going to come together, or the division is going to be even greater?
They will come together. Kenyans, or rather people in Central, and you see this Tanga movement, it's temporary and it's got a short shelf life. It won't see itself past the elections. I think they're up for rent, but they're not for sale, for sure.
So it could either be one of three. Either King Kaka was basically just using his creativity to come up with a song and reflecting on what the youth, like he says, the country is saying and what the country is
But
thinking.
completely missed out on mentioning
Secondly,
the DP.
secondly, he could have been sponsored by somebody who's against Waiguru, or he could have been sponsored by somebody who's for Waiguru
Absolutely.
to run. Either way,
Yeah.
the point
The
is...
four Waiguru, I think, is serious chess. I'd be very impressed if that's what they did, and not knowing what the fallout would be. I think it's more than likely to be the middle one, whereby it's somebody who is against Waiguru that has sponsored this.
You don't trust
That
King
is-
Kaka's creativity to actually